Recorder. The time is now 9:34 a.m. I'm going to call the meeting of the Venetian Community Development District to order. Today is Monday, May 12th, 2025. The first item on the agenda is the call to order / roll call. Those supervisors that are present are Jill Pizarro, Cheryl Harmon-Tarana, Cindy Sneezik, and Rich Goodman. On behalf of District Management is myself, Belinda Blandon. District Council Dan Lewis is with us. District Engineer Rick Schoppeger is present. Field Manager Keith Livermore is present, and on behalf of VESTA, we have Julie Bortina, and for the record, there are audience members present. The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion of the agenda. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Let's go back to the pledge.
Where's the flag? Yeah, let's all look at Belinda.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Belinda, before we go into public comment, may I make a request? I would just like to request a moment of silence for our prior board member, Eric McCaffrey, who passed away last week. If we could all just keep his family in our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that.
The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion of the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, we will limit public comments to 3 minutes per person. Before we do that, supervisors, Ken is going to be logging in via Teams. We might as well just take a vote, a motion and a second
Yes.
to allow Ken to participate in
I'll
both
make
via
a
Teams.
motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Dave Mazza is going to be dialing in at 10. We should be ready for him by then. I know we may have to jiggle how we do things here, but he's got a hard stop, I think, at 10:30 for a plane, so hopefully we can, make that happen. Great.
Our first speaker is Pat Apollonia.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Three unrelated comments. First, Cheryl, thank you for addressing the landscape trimming of the amenities area so quickly. It looks great. There were full crews out there. Secondly, I know we have Jonas issues, but for tennis, it's just relentless. The chair of the racket committee has met with Jonas several times in phone calls. I think Cindy, you have. Things don't get changed. This morning, we couldn't even get online to book a court. I don't know if it worked for dining too, and that may sound like a trivial issue, but if you're a tennis player, it isn't. It took some finagling to get that addressed. And thirdly, I was very happy to hear you comment on the fact that golf carts are not legal vehicles on our streets. And I hope you give that the same consideration if you come to the point about the golf cart parking issue in the amenities lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Taras. Could you pronounce your last name for me?
Don't bother. Good morning.
Morning.
A couple of very quick comments, positive all in nature. Cheryl, I'll be another person to say I've seen a huge improvement in the tiki area, the menu, the service, the couple people you have there are terrific behind the bar, the servers. I don't want to start naming names. They're very good. The food is very good.
Yeah.
Same here, idea with pizza.
Great.
All going in the right direction. Please continue that. So I'll say that. Number two, and maybe it was Jonas, but if you're not aware, last night, my wife, who's a big user of the fitness area, could not get in the system. 8:30, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, circle, and wasn't working.
Like the waiting thing, it was waiting.
Yeah, but it never got on.
It never got out.
It never got on. So I know if you're not aware of it, please be aware of it. The very last thing is I heard some of the conversations about the rumble strips, whatever you want to call them, stop signs, and traffic. I couldn't agree more. I know came up at the POA meeting. I'll also be speaking later this afternoon. I think they're having an open forum as well. I brought up the issue to them at their last POA meeting. Not disagreeing, but we need to understand what the size of the problem is before investing 30,000 more mobile units or whatever, and then understand what you want to accomplish in this. Because if the goal is to make zero, not gonna happen. I just went through the police stats and all that stuff. How many police officers you have on the streets, red lights, stop signs, and you still have issuing summonses, tickets, because people still go through them, and they said they'll never have zero. The other thing is, with all the cars on the roads, and I'll suggest that we'll always have one issue with somebody going through a stop sign, going a little bit faster. The key is, you're never gonna stop that, right now, but it's less than 1/10 of 1% what they're having on the state highways, and the roads. I don't know about in developments, is people actually get cited with how many cars go through, how many actually have violations and all that stuff. So again, and that stat never seems to change, no matter how many years or whatever, in all, I'm just looking at Florida State in that. So you'll never have zero, and I'm sure you'll never have zero with all that. But before investing, rumble strips, I think, are a great idea as a deterrent. Personally, I put a stop sign at almost every intersection, just to force them to think about it. But again, the idea is deterrent, and you never get to zero. But before spending a lot of money that you have, we eventually, whether the POA enforces it, whoever, it still comes out of all our residents' pockets. So think very closely as to what's the best bang for the buck, and what do you want to accomplish in that goal, before making that decision.
Sure. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate
Hey,
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tim Schimberg.
it. Morning, Tim.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning. In the last meeting, I brought up a couple of issues. One of them was the doors on the dumpsters back here, and the other was the condition of this storage area.
Yeah.
I know since then, the board that was nailed across has been removed. The hinges have been reinforced with some additional screws. But I think we all know that the door on the shed out here is completely gone. It's rotted out. And the other thing is that the dumpster doors are broken down the center. I don't think that either of these areas are safe for hurricane season. And I was looking for some explanation as to what is or isn't going to be done about that. Because hurricane season is just around the corner and I don't want to run out of time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I just answer?
Yeah, you want to just
Okay.
address it?
Even before you mentioned that door, we were aware of it. We have the people that were looking to do the repairs, the River Club, looking at that, giving us quotes or addressing it when they get here with a T&M quote. So we know that. The dumpster doors we have not looked at, but we will take a look at those and see what, I'll have facilities take a look at that and see what we can do on those.
Thanks.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Darlene Schimberg.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to talk about a few things. I do want to talk about the storage shed. And I hope I misunderstood this, but someone told me that we are keeping our food containers, that were to-go containers, are stored in that shed. That's a wood shed. Those are styrofoam and cardboard containers. And I know we're short on space, but that is not very healthy as far as I'm concerned. I would not want to know that that's where my containers are being stored. That's number one. The other thing is when we stand up here and make comments to the board, I think it's only respectful on your part to come back to the people with something, either in the next meeting or just like Rich just said right now, we are looking into it, but we don't know that unless we ask you again and we come back to you and ask the same question again. So I think that some people feel is it worth coming here and saying anything because do you truly listen? I think you do because I come to all the meetings and to the workshops and I hear what you have to say. But if you don't do that then, that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, you want us here, but you don't want us here. I mean, it's one or the other, so we are here. So
Okay,
that's
appreciate
it.
that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. I do have one more thing. I just want to tell you that I want to agree with Taurus. I think this club is going absolutely in the right direction. I appreciate the staff, I appreciate what they're doing, and I think we're going to see, with some of the revamping of the staff here, further organization and further process moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Appreciate it. Sure the staff does. Don't do it again.
I know. But I still had time. Belinda didn't tell me to sit down. You still have time?
Okay, there being no further speakers signed in, we're gonna close out public comment and move forward with our agenda. We're gonna move into staff reports. We don't have landscaping inspection services or report. That'll be for the second meeting of the month. Rick, do you have anything to report?
Yes.
More kind of photos.
More photos.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
that looks serious.
Okay, what I just passed out was the authorization you guys did at the last meeting. This is the clean out of the two areas. One was for the outfoot fall, which we had a tree that kind of fell over top. We had a lot of peppers. You could see that it's all clear. The other spot, the big pipes is the northwest, the outfall that goes under the Shell Road way. You can see they cleared both sides of that. So that's our two of our major outfalls they're clear. I was out here Friday and I did send the board members the email with some photos. I did the Swift Mud recertification for phases 5 and 7. There was nothing that I saw that prevented me from doing the certification. So the recertifications have been completed. I did find a couple very minor issues, and I did put together a bid, a package to clean up a couple of storm boxes that lead from wetlands into the ponds. We need to clean up around them, and then one outfall that went from the pond to the wetland. The grate was pushed off by about four inches or so. And because I just recently had rotator cuff, my doctor probably would have frowned on me to try to muscle that back in. And then one other spot in phase 5, there was a lot of growth over top of the bubbler, and that's pretty easy to clean up too. So I was hoping I would get some numbers today, but I haven't gotten them just yet. Pond 7, they're going to start that work hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's the south half of the pond. Still working with the signage vendor. I thought that last meeting they had all their stuff. They were waiting for one other item, so I'm still working on that. The parking lot, we are set to repay that July 14th. So all the staff is kind of aware, kind of know what was going to happen. And Joe, you look like you want to say something.
No,
Okay.
Not yet.
My comment's gonna be if we're doing this on July 14th, we need to start communicating to the community by June 1st.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation, is that we start throwing out emails to remind everybody the parking lots are gonna be
And
closed.
we also need to, and also with the parking lot, we need to coordinate with the striper 3 weeks later, which then may affect the closing date. So we should try to schedule out for the 3 weeks from the Monday after that. So we can make sure that happens, or if we could do half, I don't know if they can do half and half. I don't know how long it's gonna take them to strike. So you gotta get back to us and let us know. If we could do it half and half, that would be great, so we don't have to shut down anything. Or
Okay, I'll follow up with them on that. The last thing I had, Keith sent me something Thursday or Friday regarding the landscaping along Laurel. I guess Jerry reached out to Keith and mentioned that there's been some things that happened in the past out there, so he asked me, maybe, what do I recall? There was a 30-foot, let me back up. What we own from the residence property line, we own 25 foot south. Then there was another 10 foot south of that was part of Common Area 7 that was dedicated to us. So we own 35 feet from the residence property line to the south. That's what we own. Now, way back in 2012 or 2011 or so, there was a 30-foot landscape easement between the CDD and WCI that we were, we had the right to put in, maintain 30 foot south of what we owned. Now that's 20 foot because we did get that 10 foot dedicated to us. So there's another 20 foot piece. Now WCI doesn't exist. And I sent the email to Andy and to Belinda just to see, because that land now no longer belongs to WCI. It's either city or the county. And so I didn't know if that easement went with the sale or the transaction. So that's something before we start planning that, we should maybe make sure that's okay. So.
And while you're talking about that, I also have all these documents from 2011 to 2014 that talk about a road transfer agreement and also an agreement between the City of Venice and the Water Authority, where the City of Venice says, we'll take care of the landscaping, which they never did. And then further letters to the City of Venice saying, you said you were going to take care of the landscaping or not, and they say, well, we decided to let it go native. And then there's some kind of an easement. In the midst of all of that, there's all these plans I cannot read, which are some kind of an easement for the Water Authority. And so my question to you all is, I can call the assistant city manager. The city manager is really not taking calls anymore. So we can call the assistant city manager, who seems to be willing to talk. I don't believe he's gonna know anything about it. So I need some help understanding where I'm going and what I'm digging into.
Just email what you have over to Andy,
Okay.
and we will review it all.
Okay, I have a bunch.
That's
Okay.
And I do have the plans of the pipeline that was installed. Now, chances of anything going wrong with that pipeline are pretty rare.
Oh, you mean the water main?
Major water main.
That 40-inch
A
water
major
main.
water main.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
I mean, I have emails between city officials really mad about the fact that somebody even agreed to take on
Oh.
maintaining the buffer and took that from the Water Authority because it should have been the Water Authority. So this goes pretty deep and ugly, and there's a lot of, yeah.
You got stuck.
I got a question. Hey, this kind of goes back to something I said when I first started. We should have a depository of all this information
Yeah.
someplace. I mean, if I pick something up, you have something, I mean, we should, for future supervisors, there should, there should be like one
I agree.
place where all
There
this
should be a
stuff is
SharePoint.
kept.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
So every-
SharePoint's better than paper.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like you just took on the
Yeah.
task.
Well, it could go on, I mean, that's part of what the CDD website is for. There are all kinds of files out there. We can certainly put something out there.
Well, and if you want password protected, I mean, I don't care, but there should be a
None of
place.
this is all public.
This is all public, so yeah.
Then
That's where it should go.
then we should have a depository of this information of things that we can try to categorize it by easement, sewer, landscaping,
I'll see if I can figure that
swift mud
out.
water, yeah,
And I have little access. Let me see if I can figure out what to do.
Okay,
and then I'll
perfect.
talk to Belinda.
good, okay, great.
Just a history on that, Cheryl, because the meeting minutes from the committee meetings are not out on the CDD website, so I don't know if there's a space constraint, just information.
I thought they
No.
were up there.
No.
Yeah, they're not out there.
No, originally when the site was moved over to the ADA compliance site,
Uh-huh.
there was a restriction as to how many documents we would put
Oh,
on the website, so
okay.
we stuck with what was statutorily required. But at
That's
this
the
point,
restriction.
school now has removed that requirement where they would charge the district for anything outside of, I think it was over 1,000 scans. So at this point, if you want to put them going forward, they can be
Okay,
put in
okay.
separate folders, we can create them and upload them.
Perfect,
I
thank
think
you.
we should, because not all the committees are technically River Club committees anyway, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Reserves is not.
Exactly, landscape's not, okay,
Yeah.
okay, great, sorry for the sidebar, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry,
Okay,
Rick.
and then I understand you maybe want to talk a little bit about speed, bumps, humps,
Tables.
cushions,
Yeah.
tables.
So I emailed you because was at the POA meeting on Thursday, and there was a conversation about how do we get control of, the perceived traffic situation that we may have here. And the reason I was asking is because, we can either make an investment, like Keith was saying earlier, in a traffic hawk, or we can make the investment in speed bumps. So that's what I was inquiring about is, kind of where are we at from a cost perspective, and how many speed bumps do we want to throw down to help control the traffic?
Right.
Well, one of the residents mentioned about stop signs. If you deem there's a traffic concern or the issue, we don't have to have any extensive studies done to install stop signs. I have communities that put stop signs up on almost every intersection on the major roads. Now,
Okay.
that helps some of the times, but what you're gonna see is people have lost a little time, so now they're gonna speed up right after that to get to the next one. So that was something you will see with that. So that's one thing. Now, on the speed, the humps that you have, those are what is preferred by the city of Venice emergency vehicles, because there's space. The wheel bases on the emergency vehicles is wider than your normal, so they span all of those. So
It's the width and not the.
So you could make them slightly higher if we needed to? No? Okay.
there's a magical number that you want to stay within,
Okay,
because some of the vehicles, when they start bottoming out, they're gonna come after you.
okay.
So there is an allowable maximum. So, but yeah, speed cushions are the most preferred by the city and the emergency. Now, the speed bumps are the most effective because they rattle you
Yeah.
They rattle your cage.
that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those, also, if you're gonna consider, you need to make sure where, because you need to get with the residents, because any of these service vehicles that have a trailer, all that stuff is mounts, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of, and
Yeah.
now speed tables, those are the most expensive.
So we don't have tables, those are humps.
Correct,
Okay.
but there are a thing called a speed table that is longer, wider, a flat top, transition up and down, and those, like I said, that's a lot more involved with those.
Okay.
So
Oh,
What
those are
about
some.
rumble strips that were mentioned by Terrace?
Yeah, I'm not really seeing rumble strips in communities, so, Now, are they allowed or not allowed? I don't know, but I don't think I've ever seen
Like
one.
cattle guards?
That was just using that as a sample for humps and bumps, whatever you want to call them.
But they're a lot less invasive if you think, I'm from the Midwest, I know cattle guards. You know, so, and they are a lot less invasive and probably a lot less expensive, and they do get your attention because you know when you hit them, you have to slow down. So, I don't know, maybe worth considering.
Well,
We
let's see
don't wanna
what,
put humps in both.
let's see what Paul does, I guess.
The other thing, if you're gonna, a speed bump, in one community, we put them in per the standard.
Right.
They milled that to half of the standard, and it still works pretty well. But now people don't scream as much as they did when instead of being 4 inches, they put it 2 inches or 1 3/4 inches, I believe. So those are some of your options. And again, you as a board deem a safety issue that gives you the permission to basically do whatever you want.
Okay, some pricing for speed bumps when the guys, did you ever get anything back?
Yeah, I forward some to Cindy, the speed cushions that we have per location, they were right around $1,200.
Right.
And that's when the guys were working here doing the parking lot, or?
No, we brought them in to do those.
No, I'm saying, at the last meeting, I asked you to find out how much it would be to put speed bumps in the front entrance when the guys were working here in the parking lot, to see if we can piggyback and save a lot of money, because if the guys are in the community working, we should utilize that.
Right, and if we put in a speed bump or the cushions, because a cushion is more expensive than a speed bump. Cushions should be around $1,200.
Yeah, that's
But
what,
it'd be 1,200 with the guys here.
Come on, probably less.
I see you.
Oh, well, but that's what I asked you 4 weeks ago and then 2 weeks ago. So can we get a real answer?
Okay, well, I guess I didn't
Okay.
get the understanding of exactly what we wanted. Speed bumps, humps,
Right.
cushions.
You never
Well,
told them which
well-
ones you needed. I haven't told you
Okay.
which ones I needed. I was just,
I don't know either, but
Yeah.
I was leaving that to you guys to figure out to come up with something, a plan, but we talked about it. You never asked me which one I wanted. So we left here that last time you said, I'll get your price. I'm waiting to hear back. So if we're waiting to hear back, I'm just kind of a little lost. That I thought we knew we were gonna do something in the front entrance. We've been talking about it for several meetings now, and Cindy has the information, but I don't, and now you're telling me.
I had just a,
No, I know, but I wanted a real quote. I wanted a real quote, because we've been talking about this, for several months now.
Okay, but I didn't think I ever got direction on exactly
Well,
what we wanted.
You didn't ask. You didn't ask me, I needed a piece of information, so I can't.
But if it's gonna be, just so you know, for the future reference, if there is for Rick, myself, anyone, if you're going to direct us to do something, it needs to be fairly clear on the record, so that, because it's gonna cost money on their end. So it's more of a, we actually need to give clear directive to do.
so we need to, so basically, if I understand this correctly, then what we need to do is we need to find out how many speed bumps, humps, whatever we
And then
want
go
around,
around
and then
we're looking at 7 or whatever.
and we can say we're looking at 7 different locations, here, 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 and here.
Okay.
And then you can say this is what a bump, hump, and table are gonna cost. Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
All right, perfect, all right.
Okay, I'm just for clarity, but are you saying that we should agree on it and kind of here in these public meetings so that it's on record that we've asked for the quote, and because since it will cost money to do?
Yeah, if you're going to direct staff
Yeah.
if you're gonna direct staff to do like get quotes or to work on something, especially like hourlies, like even like me, but you want it to be clear, you want at least one director to be clear on the record so that we can go forward.
Yeah.
Understand, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay,
All
cool.
right, so I guess the question is then, who do we want to have go around and decide what and the number of speed bumps are needed?
Well, I think
Is that-
Keith
Keith
was
is gonna
gonna
do that?
start with Paul and
Paul.
see what Paul recommends, and then maybe we can come back together after Keith gets that, and
Okay.
then. give
Paul's
you
a
their-
gate guy.
Yeah, Paul's the gate guy though.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, he's seen a lot out there in
Okay.
front of these gates.
Okay,
And I'll read you a text I got from him this morning when we were talking about that. But out in the community, he would be, just what he's seen in front of gates.
So Keith, would you work with Rick,
Of
or
course,
do you want some, okay,
Great, okay.
thank you,
Then
that's
we'll
all I
go
want
around.
clarification
Okay,
on.
Do you
We'll
guys
get
have
some
a preference on what kind, like I said, speed bump?
I think what we have already, what do you
Cushions.
guys think?
Get all of them.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, what you said, Cindy, get all three,
Yeah.
so you know we can make a decision.
I would like to get, cost of all three, because in some cases, we might want speed bumps.
Yeah.
Other cases, we might want speed humps. We don't have to have one of everything, is what I'm thinking.
We should also verify what the fire department will allow us to have.
Yes, yeah, oh, absolutely,
That's
well,
the
yeah,
issue.
that's, and then they, once Rick and
Okay.
Keith come back.
Even within the community.
Yes,
All right,
thank you,
okay,
appreciate it, Rick.
okay. All
And
right,
that's all I have.
thank you.
Thank you.
So we should probably move on to
Yes.
Dave Mazza.
Yeah.
Anybody who's in the audience, the next agenda item we're gonna be covering from Dana Investments, I think we have them. They manage our funds, and there's a hard copy of their presentation up on the table, so if anybody wants a hard copy of it, you're certainly welcome to it. That way you can follow along. Help yourself. If we run out,
Thank you
I
very
can get
much.
more. Yep. So, Dave, I think you're on with us?
Yes, you've got both Dave Mazza and Matt Slawinski, our lead portfolio manager.
Super, that's great. So, so you've got four of us in the room here. You've got Rich Goodman, Cindy Sneezek, Cheryl Harmontrona, and myself. Ken is on the phone, Ken Spah's on the phone, and we've got some audience members and also district council and our district manager. So, if you want to just launch off and take us through, I think the time is good and we'd be grateful.
Okay, great. I'll just do a brief introduction and then I'll turn it over to Matt to go over the current status of the economy and the market.
Okay.
But we've got, as Jill mentioned, we help manage the investments for you, and we've got a mix of both investments, in traditional, in a separately managed account format with a customized portfolio made up of individual bonds that we manage for you in accordance with the liabilities that are out there. So we try and earn as much as we can on those assets while they're around. And then we've also got a makeup of some short-term, more liquid cash where when the tax roll money comes in, we can invest that really short-term until it's needed for operational needs. So we've been doing this now with Belinda and others at Rosetta for a couple of years, and I think we've got it working pretty well between the approval process and investment process. So we appreciate the help from Belinda and her team, and we will keep doing what we're doing because we've got a pretty good system going right now.
Yeah, agreed.
That's great.
Yeah, it does look great.
All right, so with that brief introduction, Jill said what we really would like to cover now is with the volatility in the market is, what's going on in the market and what's our outlook here at Dana. And so with me, I've got Matt Slawinski, who's our lead portfolio manager on the fixed income side. And I will turn things over to Matt to go over our thoughts on the economy.
Great.
Thanks, Dave. I'll go through relatively quickly and kind of give you our thoughts on what we're seeing. There's obviously a lot of news flow, even this morning already with China and the tariff deal that we've got that was announced today. So there's a lot of things going on that are certainly impacting the markets and have been really for the balance of 2025. Page 3 in the materials has just a snapshot of the performance year to date through the end of April. And you know, I'm not gonna make too many comments there other than to say that with all the volatility in the market, the portfolio is still performing really well. You know, you're running over a 4.5% rate of return annualized. Last 12 months is right around that. So it's kind of been in that 4.5% to 5% range really since we've managed the portfolio. And even with the volatility that we've seen, we're still tracking in that area. So we're happy with that. Page 4 is kind of really where things kind of come together. And that's really all of the leading economic indicators that we look at. We're looking at the market, we're looking at the economy, and this is really kind of the focus right now. The Fed had a meeting last week and they came out and said, well, we're on hold for, from an interest rate policy perspective, not changing anything at the moment. And really what they're watching is the data that you see here. And there's kind of two camps. One is that while we can get inflation from tariffs, it's typically inflationary. We've had a pretty dramatic announcement, you know, about a month ago with some pretty heavy tariffs across the globe. And now we're seeing some of those rolled back. So you know, if we were in that maximum tariff scenario, generally what you would expect to see is inflation running 5, 6, 7% potentially year over year. And eventually an economic contraction because of it. Well, obviously we're making changes here. Deals are being done. We had one last week with the UK, now we've got China. So over time, some of these are being rolled back. And so the challenge now is to determine, well, where's all the data going to land? And you can see in the upper left, real GDPs had a negative print, which is kind of an indicator that you're looking at a potential recession. If you're running negative for a few quarters in a row, that would be a technical recession. But yet inflation is at 2.4%, which is pretty well reined in and in line with where the Fed would like to see it. Unemployment is at 4.2%, which is full employment. So there's a lot of good pieces of data here, but yet there is a little bit of economic weakness. And so kind of what we've seen is the Fed really paying attention to say, well, we got to see which way the data breaks, because, you know, if you have inflation, that would mean that they would need to raise rates like they did in 2022. So in 2022, we had double-digit inflation. It came out, they raised rates from 0 to over 5% on the Fed funds rate to address inflation. They bring that in, and now we're back to that 2.5% level. However, if you have a recession or an economic contraction of some kind, they would actually need to cut rates, which is, you know, the exact opposite of what you do in a tariff scenario. So the Fed is kind of in the middle right now. They're kind of stuck in the middle saying, well, what do we do? We need to see the data play out. When you look at what's happened in the market year to date, and I'll fast forward to page 6 here because I've got it kind of charted out from an interest rate perspective. And we put a lot of different pieces on here, different dates. So it's a little bit confusing, but what I'll do is just focus on kind of the two most important ones to me right now, which are the teal line in the middle, which is the end of 2024, and that's really, you know, across the board what did interest rates look like from 1 month all the way up to 30 years in treasuries. And then the bright green line is where we are as of last week. And so if you look at those two, what you'll notice is kind of in the middle of the page, it's kind of the 1 year out to 10-year area. So anything that matures between 1 and 10 years, rates have significantly dropped year to date. And that is a reflection of the market reacting to the potential for a recession. Typically what happens when there's a little bit of economic uncertainty, some weakness coming through, you get what's called a risk-off trade, which is investors saying, give me treasuries, give me, you know, everything that's safe. I want safety. I want to just preserve my money. And when that happens, yields go down in treasuries, which is what we've seen. There's no surprise that it corresponds to the equity markets and kind of the pullback that we saw in the equity markets in March and April. So it's kind of, you know, one goes hand in hand where they see equity markets no one risk. They see that there's a lot of volatility. Those people tend to go buy treasuries in those times. And so that's what we've seen. However, we look at what's happening today, every time you get a deal, interest rates in that area of the yield curve go up. And that's what we're seeing this morning, pretty significant move in treasuries where yields are going back up towards where they were at the end of the year, kind of a reversal of all of it. And so, really what we're doing from a portfolio perspective is we're looking at this and saying, we don't want to put anything in a portfolio that adds unnecessary risk, because it's anybody's guess as to what a deal will look like with any individual country. I think most people would say that it was not a shock that President Trump likes to negotiate, and so you kind of go to the maximum position and then you bring it back in as you negotiate. So it's no surprise that some of this is getting rolled back. The question is, where do you end up at the end of it? And that's really kind of the key piece. Nobody will know. Ultimately, you're just going to have to see where the data comes in. So when we position portfolios, we're looking for the most yield we can get relative interest rate risk we're taking. And that's essentially what we're doing with the agents and treasuries that we're putting in the portfolio. And again, that does strip out a lot of the volatility. The way we do that is right now we're staying short. So when you look at that chart, anything inside of 1 year hasn't done anything year to date. The yields are exactly the same. Also, if you're buying there, you're getting more compensation than if you're buying a 3-year bond. And yields haven't moved on you at all year to date, so you have no volatility in those positions. And so depending on where you position your portfolio, what type of maturity you buy, it impacts the compensation you get, and it impacts the volatility you experience. So we've been very conservative with how we position, and that's worked out well from a performance standpoint. When we look at page 7, the next page, this is us, charting out really essentially where the probability is that the Fed funds rate moves over time. And on the far right side of this chart, you'll see a couple of dotted lines. The green one is the market expectation. That is directly from the Fed funds futures market, saying, okay, well, if we're an investor, where do we think Fed funds is going to be 6 months from now, a year from now, out at the end of 2027, et cetera? Well, any given day, those numbers move around because those are investors placing real capital at risk and trying to make a bet essentially on where that's going to go. You can see there that the general prediction is lower, but yet not really below 3%. So that would be a few cuts, potentially, 2 or 3 or 4 over the next year or so, and then kind of bottoming out where we don't take interest rates any lower than that. The Fed's blue line there is their internal prediction. You can see they're very close. The market and the Fed kind of are very similar to what their predictions are, and they state them. Our real feel here, though, from Dana's perspective, when we look at kind of the Fed funds futures market now, the prediction is 2 rate cuts by the end of 2025 of 25 basis points, so 0.5%. That was 4, so that was 1 full percent last week, and it's changed, multiple times over the last several quarters. And we really think that the market has been too aggressive in predicting rate cuts out of the Fed. And ultimately, that's what we would like to see. We would like to see the Fed stay at a relatively reasonable rate, which I would argue they are at now at 4%. That helps us as fixed income investors. If we can buy bonds that get you 4+% in yield and we can hold those, you end up with returns like what we've seen in the portfolio. If they take rates to 0 like they had to do, following the financial crisis or during the COVID period, well then, yields that we're getting aren't really earning you anything. And so that's what we're trying to, we're obviously hoping for them to maintain a reasonable level of rates. Obviously nothing too high that's dramatic, like when we had 5% rates, and that does slow an economy down. So there's a balance of where they need to land on this. And I think the general feeling from the market is they would like to see rate cuts, because that's essentially something that would prop up the equity market, but it wouldn't necessarily be great for fixed income. So we'll see where the data comes out. If we look at page 9 and 10, I'll hit those really quickly, and if there's any questions, I can certainly take those. But 9 shows you where CPI has been over time, and you can see here inflation was at 9% and came down to 2.4. That's where we're at now. which is right in the wheelhouse of where they think natural inflation should be. They would say naturally prices should move up over time slowly at a minimal amount, which they would gauge at 2%, so we're right around that. And page 10, they would say 4.5 to 4%, is kind of full employment. If you look at an unemployment rate, depending on the participation rate, but right now where data stands at 4.2%, that's right in line. 177,000 jobs per month in non-farm payrolls is right in line where the economy's been over long periods of time. And so all of that data looks very, very good to them. So from our perspective, our fixed income team, we talk about this a lot. We look at a lot of the data, a lot of the research. And one of the things we keep back to is it really doesn't make sense for the Fed to move if they're right at their targets on both of their mandates. Their dual mandate is price stability and employment. If both of them are at your target rate, it would make no sense to change your target rate because all you're going to do is impact one of those mandates either positively or negatively, but that's just going to cause you to drift from where you actually want to be. And so if you're the Fed, and we heard that of Jerome Powell last week, he said we're on hold indefinitely. We don't see any reason to change. We can be patient. All of the things you would expect him to say when he basically hit his mark in both ways following COVID and the inflation that came from that. So from our perspective, we're certainly expecting more volatility. We saw that in the first Trump administration. There's a lot of negotiating, a lot of deal making that goes on. There's a lot of news flow and the market reacts to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that portfolios need to be traded any differently than we normally would trade them, which means we're always going to look for the maximum amount of value, which is how much do you get compensated per unit of risk you take. That's what we look at. That's our metric to make sure that we're building a strong portfolio. And then on top of it, obviously, as Dave said, we're customizing it for you. So in your portfolios, we're layering in a lot of liquidity for your operational cash flow needs. And if we can bring those two together, you get what we've seen, which is relatively strong returns out of the portfolio, and yet the ability to hit liabilities that you need cash for to maintain your operations. So with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
I think, it's Jill here. I guess the only, and I think it's a rhetorical question really, is it sounds like, and I'm trying to remember how this, manifests in our budget. But I think generally what I hear you saying is the assumption that we made for the current fiscal year probably is not a bad assumption for our budgeting process that we're going to be going through later this month and approving next month. But is there a reason to be maybe, a half a basis point more conservative in any assumption we make? Should we dial it back by 0.5?
That's a great question. So the way I look at portfolios from a budgeting standpoint is I typically look at them on characteristics. And so you can obviously look at historical performance and kind of where you're tracking year to date. That impacts it certainly. But the other thing we look at is, what's the current yield of the portfolio? Because that has a significant impact as well. We would say typically, if you're going to look for a budget for a fiscal year, the way I tend to tell clients is look at the yield of the portfolio, what's the characteristics of it, and then put a conservative range around that. So, if the Fed were to come out and cut rates in the second half of the year, as Fed funds futures market is predicting, that's 50 basis points lower, that's actually going to give you gains in your portfolio. It's going to drop the yield going forward, but it's going to give you gains in your portfolio because the prices on the securities you already own will go up.
Right.
Yeah.
Your yield on your portfolio right now is 4.61%. So I would say, you've been tracking around that 4.5%. I would put a conservative range around that. That could be 4.25% to 4.5% or 4 to 4.5%, but that's really where I would be. And if the Fed cuts rates, then you are going to outperform that range you build from a budgeting standpoint. And
And if that doesn't do anything, or if they raise rates, because you already are yielding that anyway, you're probably gonna hit that number regardless.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, that's great. That was really the primary question I had. Anybody else?
No questions?
No? Anybody else?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's incredibly,
Yes.
incredibly helpful. You know, and I just want to say also, you know, again, you know, thanks. I was the naysayer on the board a couple of years ago when we brought you guys on, and I think you've done a great job for us, and I personally appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Joe. We appreciate that vote of confidence.
Certainly appreciate the time as well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is great. So we'll stay in touch and appreciate getting the updates from you. This is really helpful.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the time.
Safe trip.
Have a good week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And I think for budget last year, for some reason, I remember 3%. I think we were trying to be
Right.
conservative and do 3%. So nice to know we have cushion, but
Yeah,
I'm still all for staying conservative at 3%.
absolutely.
I mean, it's always nice to, outperform. So,
Yeah, it's nice to have a good surprise at the end of the year versus a bad one.
Yeah, and, you know, I know we have constraints because we're government and they, you know, they're not gonna go out buying beefsteak rinds, but at the same time, though, I think they've done a really nice job of return. So great find. I think you were the chair of the reserve committee.
yeah.
Scared them off. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so, William.
All right.
Okay, good. Okay, district council.
So we're gonna move back into staff reports. Dan, do you have anything to report?
Yes, again, Dan Lewis. I just want to follow up from our discussion on last meeting. My firm has reached out to DPBR in regards to the self-reporting. And I think Andy's updated you, Jill, but just for the rest of the board.
Yes.
My firm has reached out to the Tallahassee main office, the branch office in Fort Myers. We've been on the phone with them what I mean be on the phone with them, we've run through every possible connection person we could find, or just their phone tree. And we've sent emails. We've tried to contact them as much as possible.
Yep.
And we haven't really heard back anything from them.
Okay.
Doesn't mean they're not going to reach back to us, but at least on our end, we're kind of at what I would consider, we're kind of hitting the wall of what, like, the amount of self-reporting we could actually do. So right now, we're kind of in a wait and see if they want to do anything with the information.
So we've called and said we want to do it. We haven't sent them anything
Yeah,
factual.
We've reached out to them and tried to call them and essentially tried to convey the information to them, as in any form we could, and we haven't heard back from them. Like I said, we may hear back from them. At this point, I think we've exhausted all our abilities to talk to them.
I think that was the main thing, though, was to just, do our best.
Yes,
To
so.
find out if we were gonna get slapped. All right,
So that was really the only update from the last meeting, but I just wanted to
Okay.
convey that to
I
everybody.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Julie, do you have anything to report?
Good morning. Just to report on a response on the reservations from last night. I guess the storm, there was some relevance with that because we checked it first thing this morning. We had some issues at the pool as well because of the storm. So they were addressing all those things. And then addressing the shed storage, I'll personally look at that after the meeting and relocate anything that's open or inappropriate for that storage area. So a couple of other things. So the GM was selected. It was a 3-2 vote. We should know the start date between today and tomorrow, and we'll send you guys an email about that. Some of the things we're reviewing, especially for the new budget, reviewing prices and different charges as well. And the new menus being costed out, so we have the record of that as well. at this, and then, sorry, back to the amenity manager, the date of transition for the food and beverage manager, that will be in the next coming week or two, we'll give you that information. And then doing a report on
The date
potential,
that they were a person, I mean,
pardon?
but you'll have a date or a person. to
Got a
report.
person, but the date,
Do we know who the person, or
pardon?
do we know who the person is? I mean, or you don't want to say yet?
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, we'll check. Okay, but we're just in the process of it,
Oh,
so
okay.
as soon as we're done, I
Okay.
can,
Okay.
brief you
Hmm?
on that as well.
No, I thought you meant you said food and beverage manager.
That is correct, so we're separating the food and beverage manager and then looking at, doing a, amenity manager, so there's someone that has that kind of scope as well, and we briefly talked about that when we,
Yeah, but I didn't know if we had definite people set up, or is it too early to say? I just,
Yeah, okay, we did not approve an amenities manager.
yeah.
no, I know, we're
Sorry.
giving like the, projection, so for the next meeting, we can provide it.
And it just FYI, and this will come up in budget anyway, I have a concern with that, because that should be the GM's job.
Yeah.
Right? And
If-
and now, should be. I know what you're gonna say. So, but we haven't had a GM long enough
Understood.
to know if that works. So
Yes.
I have a little concern about adding another cost to the budget.
Yeah,
That's all
I
I'm
mean,
gonna say.
well, I agree with that, so
We'll talk about
we had Becky, and, actually, it was originally, Ricardo. We didn't, I don't know if the board approved that, but we got hit with a $70,000 salary. If, we just can't keep on throwing in people without knowing what we're doing.
Yes, sir. That wasn't in the last budget, but I don't know how, I mean, I can do the research, go far back. There was a, Sydney, a person named Sydney, and that accounting,
Yes.
that salary was in there, but I'm not saying it was the last budget.
Okay.
But I haven't got confirmation on the food and beverage manager, but I can talk to you after the meeting too, to
Well,
give you the guidance.
Yeah, I think we should all get guidance, I mean, that just make.
Well, go ahead. I was gonna say, all that I want are scenarios with the added value of those scenarios. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying we're stuck in anything specific.
Right.
I want to see a couple of different scenarios and what the value added is to the River Club with those scenarios. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. I agree
Thank
with
you.
there.
I was worried we were just.
No,
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 That's what I'm saying,
no,
that's what I'm saying,
no.
all these, all of a sudden I heard all these people,
No.
oh, wait a minute, I
Not
know we
at
had a
all.
conversation,
Okay.
I know we had a conversation, but it was.
2 steps behind myself, so I'm just gonna shut up. Thank you.
And then, we're in the process of reviewing, what we currently have on staff and also what, for the new budget as well. Something to bring to the board's attention is, we're trying to figure out some different things. So the cleaning company reported, 2 of the air fresheners were removed. So we're trying to look at different ways to secure something like that. And also we go through a lot of the trifold hand towels, so we're also looking at a possibility of the rolled version that like a normal rolled thing, because people apparently take big stacks of hand towels, so we're looking at different possibility for that, but like on how to avoid that. So is it a machine that automatically dispenses? Typically, that's what someone would, places would do. The trifolds are a little bit nicer, but it's just that we go through so many, so that'll be a consideration as well.
I also like a lot of shampoo and soap, which never answered my email.
Which is totally locked up, so I mean, I'm still checking on where that order came from, and I know you have that, but
Okay,
we had Mother's Day yesterday. I just did not have enough
sorry.
time to address it,
What's happening?
okay.
that we bought.
Okay, we bought, in January 17th, we bought 4 gallons of shampoo and 4 gallons of body soap.
Yeah.
And February 17th, we bought 4 gallons of shampoo and 4 gallons of body soap. And sometime in March, we bought 8 gallons of body soap and 8 gallons of shampoo. And for a group that was talking about, well, we don't use the showers very much, we're
Right.
going through a lot of shampoo and a lot of soap. So is it being used? Is it being
Well, where's it going?
misused? Is it being taken?
Can I back up a step?
Yeah.
Who's authorizing and approving this?
Right, basically,
So
if they,
who's
okay,
purchasing it?
right,
And then who's doing the approval for the purchase?
understood.
Where, again, I'm
Yeah.
going back to it because I'm an accountant and I'm an auditor.
Well,
Where are the checks and balances on
that-
this?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's why I sent Julie
Yes, sir.
lots of questions. So we also bought 6 of those little burners for buffets, the buffet station burners.
Uh-huh.
And then 3 weeks later, we bought 6 more. Well, what happened to the first 6? I don't know. I'm waiting for an answer. We also bought 2 inexpensive Black & Decker toasters. I don't know why we would have Black & Decker toasters here.
I did respond to you on that, though, that was for the buffet.
You didn't answer.
Yeah, that one, I knew about the toaster, the mop you asked about,
Yeah,
and then the
mop.
kid,
Where was
the
the mop?
kid
Where
bumper
was the
thing.
mop?
What's that?
Where was the mop? Where did that go?
It was in the shed, but now I responded to you on the mop,
Okay.
the toasters, and the child.
Well, we've had.
Yeah,
buffets
I'll pull it up,
I'm
right?
not gonna get into the details.
No,
but
and I
what I would like to
yes, ma'am.
see, Julie, is the process for purchase and then verification of that purchase.
Why
So
is
is,
it being-
and the associated credit card, like, so is the Amazon account, does that have the credit card automatically in it, and anybody goes in there and logs
No.
into it? How
Understood.
does all that work? And who does the approval of this?
Understood.
Yeah, because I noticed the same thing on the Geo, there were a couple of funky things, there was a viticulture tour charge for 200 and something bucks from Amazon, and I don't understand why we're paying for that, we shouldn't be. I mean, there were a bunch of supplies for a 30th birthday party, which I
Yeah,
didn't
Sure,
understand.
I'm reviewing all that with Melissa.
So I think to Cindy's.
I
point,
understand,
yeah,
it's all
if the
part of it.
Amazon account is
Yeah.
becoming a bowl of dollars. we
Yeah.
need to
You may
sort
have,
that
you may have
out.
sent it out. I don't have anything from you. You
I
sent
Okay,
it out?
it-
Yeah, okay.
That
As
goes
soon as-
hand in hand with all the noodles we've purchased for the pool and the silver garbage can that's out there.
And the one that annoys me the most is we have a Breville Nespresso maker sitting in what was Teresa's office. But we spent $80 to buy new coffee pods for it back in January.
Yeah.
The residents are not drinking that coffee and all of the flavors in it, flavor pods in there. So was Teresa and or the staff enjoying it at our expense? Because we get to drink this coffee and they get $1.30 pods each.
When I did research that and put it on there that he said that we're selling them. I know I made some for customers. But-
Only
yeah.
recently.
Understood.
If nobody knows it's there,
Right.
and the waiter is gonna go into Teresa's office at 8 o'clock at night to go make a cup of coffee, I don't think so.
Yes, sir.
That's not happening.
Yes,
So
sir.
I know you made a cup of coffee for Tim a few weeks ago after he mentioned this, but this was back in January. So nobody back in January, February, March knew that we had coffee pots.
Understood.
So, to go back to what Ken was saying, who's keeping good track of this? Well, these are all the things that our money, $20 here, $80 there, $150 there, just
Well, and it
keeps,
kind of goes back
it's
to what
just dribbling
Cindy
out the
said,
door, yeah.
but we need the checks and balances, so
Yeah.
that's.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, I don't think the person purchasing it should be the person authorizing it. That's not the way expense reports worked in our business.
No,
Right.
me either.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
Enough said.
Okay, thanks.
Cool, before you run away,
That's-
Julie,
that's
a quick logistical, well,
Oh, sure.
factual quick question. So we talked at the last board meeting about gratuities. I think we were talking about pizza and that there wouldn't be the plus.
For the
Is that-
pickup.
Yeah, is that all to-go orders that
Yes.
don't have plus or
All
just
to
pizza?
go.
It's all to go.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Somebody asked me and I kind of had a duh answer. I wasn't sure.
And we did, change the receipt.
Okay,
We changed the receipt because there is some confusion about the automatic 20%.
okay.
And the question is, are some of the servers saying it or not saying it? There was a question about that, so we changed the receipt to have some verbiage on the bottom of
Oh,
it.
that says.
And I can try and print one
Okay.
today.
In other words, you've already been charged 20%.
Right,
Makes
kind of so
sense.
someone knows. And also, I'm not sure I wouldn't, about putting it on the receipt, but so some people know that can be taken off. So if you feel you had poor service, that can be removed.
Oh,
So
I think, I mean, I'm not,
What was Joe just saying about plus on the to-goes? We're putting how much on the to-goes?
20%.
We had been, but we
Regular,
removed
yeah.
it.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I was like, is it back on? Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's off. Okay, and I have another question. I know that what's included goes into a tip pool that is split between employees.
No, wait staff only, not the.
Right, wait staff.
Runners and kitchen staff don't get any.
No,
I understand.
they get a higher wage
But-
though.
If I add a tip to what's already on there, does it go to the employee who waited on me?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to verify. Thank you.
Okay, but to go back to what, then.
But let me clear, I'm so sorry, let me clarify one thing. But when it's an event and they work all together as a team, it
No,
would,
I'm talking about when I come.
yes, I am, yes, ma'am. What is that?
I know you said the wait staff gets paid more, and this is a conversation we can have as a board too, we can think about. We had some waiters in February and March that made $9,300 between wages, overtime, and tips in a month. So we have kitchen staff making $19 an hour, popping out all of that food, killing themselves to knock out 350 meals in
Definitely
an hour
a
and a half.
budget conversation.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm just saying that's something we should think about.
Understood, when you talk about the pub.
Yeah, we need to get on that.
The only other question I was gonna ask on the parking lot, I just wanna make sure if we can get the exact thing, I know you were briefly talking about the striping.
Mhm.
Will the striping happen 2 weeks
2 or
later?
3 weeks later.
And then you'll determine like if we have to be closed or if part,
Yeah, I gotta, that's
you'll
why,
figure it out with
that's why I
them.
spoke to Rick, and I'll follow up with him afterwards to make
Okay.
sure that we have, he speaks, to you gotta find out. I don't think, we should be able to figure that out. It should be a little bit easier to do the parking lot striping, because that's not gonna be heavy equipment, so people may have to park on Bella Vista, but could then walk in, but like food truck can't come in on drive-through on
Sure.
those days.
Okay, but then for the actual paving part, I just wanna make sure we put it out there, because we wanna try and put it out there like the first week of June, because it would be 6 weeks later, so people can plan accordingly. Like, can they walk in still from
No.
Bella Vista?
I wouldn't know, because I would not think so, because if you're gonna have trucks ripping up the sidewalk,
Yeah.
ripping up the entrance on, Veneto, right by the sidewalk, that could be dangerous, and I would not want people walking right by there,
Who's gonna,
and then they're gonna have to pull the curbs up, the curbs are probably gonna be sitting on the sidewalk.
So are we
So-
closing all amenities?
I think we have to close everything down, because
Okay,
it just might be too dangerous. I mean, I told Rick, I said, let's try for the second day to get, well, actually, I changed it around. At first I said, let's get the amenities open but I think we should get the food, this side of the club open first, paid first, so they can get food deliveries in on Wednesday for sure. Because if we don't get this side open, it
Right.
closes the whole food side down longer than it closes the pool down.
yeah.
and the tennis courts or
Yeah.
the pickleball? Okay,
Yeah,
well, we'll just, I just wanna make sure we can put a specific date on it.
I would just put down right now, I mean, it's gonna be moving target anyway, because of the
Okay.
weather, it's gonna
Well,
delay it.
yeah,
So I would put down Monday, and I would say put Monday and Tuesday for sure.
and then,
Wednesday, we will let you know, Tuesday, we'll let you know for Wednesday or Thursday, when weather and other events dependent.
okay,
We just don't know.
all right, got it. Thanks.
And it's gonna be a little bit tough for the chef also figuring out how to order food for the rest of that week. But
And
we'll-
staff coming in, out,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank
Exactly.
you.
We just need to make sure that we're very clear on the communication to the community as to what's happening in terms of parking. So if we do open up the Benito Boulevard to the River Club for some reason, we need to make it clear that there's not parking in the roundabout area up here. And we just need to make sure we're communicating with the entire community so they are aware of what's happening here. Because as much as we communicated about Tech Wave, people still said we didn't communicate. So we'll communicate on that one.
I got it, yes,
Julie.
One
okay,
more
thanks.
question, Julie. I'm sorry, but I just got something. Why are the pools closed?
Oh, there was an email sent.
I know, why are the pools closed?
This morning?
Yeah.
Because the chlorine, apparently the lightning hit the chlorine dispenser, and the pool guy was here this morning with Lon, trying to get it together. By now, I'm assuming it's open, but I don't know for sure.
Because we just got a question about, it's nice to know the pools are closed, we'd like to know why. We would like better communication.
Yeah, they didn't, interestingly, they didn't put what it was.
So maybe just say that it's not because it's raining.
Yeah.
They're catering the pool.
Okay, got it.
So they're keeping the pools closed till tomorrow, Julie, because they gotta get that chemical balance back in
Back,
place.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I will make sure we get that out.
Thank you. Thanks.
Keith, do you have anything to report?
Good morning, board. Just a couple things. Palm tree for Medici between Tuesday and Thursday, okay? They had to push back last week. And so this week between Tuesday and Thursday will be delivered and put in. We had talked earlier about the gates, I talked to Paul this morning before the workshop. And he said gate part is here as soon as the rain lets up. Supposed to be after noon, we'll install. Your gates, I asked him, your gates are average on strikes. If you want to improve the strikes, get speed bumps. And he says that's a huge help on the hits.
Okay.
So
Great.
that's coming from Paul.
Would you put those in, ingress and egress?
I would,
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I think that's right.
yeah, because that becomes a speedway out there just at any time, so. And if you do have a problem with the gate not working, like the exit side right now, and that'll slow that down too, is if we have an arm that happens not to be working at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything we can do about the piggybacking? I mean,
Other than me out there shooting them. I think the speed bump will take care of a lot of that.
Okay.
We're hoping that that's what'll happen. Piggybacking is a big issue. And so, hopefully that'll take care of that issue. We'll see.
We're all neighbors here. We're all residents.
Yeah,
Yeah, we do. Right? Right? And we're doing it to each other.
Right.
Still look at it, but okay.
just a couple, just a couple.
Yeah, I know.
There's more than a couple.
That's all you need. A few, but you only need a few.
Thank you for the report, by the way. It's
Yes,
so,
thank
it's so
you.
helpful. to
Yep,
have
that was great.
Because I think, I'm speaking only for myself. Somebody asked me a question, I look a little bit less blank. Although these days, that's not hard, but, yeah, thank you
We'll
for
be
that.
getting that out every Friday.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Sometimes on
Yeah,
Thursday, okay.
Yep.
It's great stuff.
And if there's any emergency that comes up or something like that, just, gate broken, got out for 3 days, just a quick little.
Yeah,
Thomas.
that email was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, you know what it is, people are, retired people are busy, right? So I think, that email actually was really well received. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sending that. Yeah, thanks.
And
Appreciate it.
thank
Thanks,
you for all the
Keith.
quality time we have been spending together. And also.
As long as I'm driving.
He doesn't like my driving. Neither here nor there. Now I lost my train of thought. It's okay, I'll catch up with you later. I think it's about the mulch. I think the cubic yardage is wrong on the mulch quote, so we can.
They
talk about
measured
that
it.
later.
They went out and measured that.
But could there be any quantification for the fact that there would be more mulch beds with the new design? I want to talk to you about it, 'cause I want to make sure we're not underestimating.
Okay.
Okay, this is for the new landscaping on Laurel Road. Okay,
It's a huge,
it is, yeah,
huge savings.
oh, it's huge, really?
Yeah.
But I think if I do,
Well, it
if I
should
do
be.
my cost,
It's $8 a bed, just $2 a bed or less.
yeah,
No,
it's a big
it's
thing.
But I
like,
think it sounds like it was amount as well.
It is, because this
Yeah.
quote from the distribution direct is only 250 cubic yards, and if we use the numbers that Juniper had on, it should be 600 cubic yards.
wow.
So, and I don't know, like I said, I'm not sure if it's because the beds they think will be larger and need more mulch, or that's what I want to make sure. I would actually like to get a quote from them for the, like.
Apples to apples.
563, so we have apples to apples.
Okay.
It's still gonna be a ton less, but I want apples to
Yeah.
apples.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, okay, cool. It wasn't the question that flipped out of my head, but that will come back to me.
Thanks.
It's freezing in here.
It is freezing in here.
It actually warmed up a little bit. It's right here.
Okay. All right.
So just as a reminder, supervisors, we are holding our budget workshop next week. I have completed the general fund budget. The only thing I'm pending is, the insurance breakdown, which I've sent back to Aegis, because I don't think that the numbers were correct when they sent them to me. So I should have those by the end of the day today, and then I'll only be pending the River Club budget so that I can put the entire packet together with the assessment schedules. Julie, when do you think you guys will have the draft ready so that I can, put it in with the packet?
I would say Thursday, just to say it's safe. Possibly Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think if we have it by Wednesday, that'll give the board an entire week to review, the majority of the materials. So, I'll
When is
just,
the budget workshop? What's the date?
the 21st, at 9:30.
In regards to the budget workshop, I had sent to Melissa, I was kind of, being that I've been running the numbers for the last couple of years and coming to the board complaining about budgets and whatever, so I rebuilt, no, really? So I rebuilt, I did an extrapolation of what I think this year is gonna be, and then I carried out several scenarios for budgets next week. I'm gonna send it to Belinda so she can then send it to all of you guys.
Great.
This way you can at least see my thinking.
Excel?
Yeah, it's Excel, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I did it for admin and I did it for F&B. I did a little bit for fitness, but I don't know all the people and players and stuff, so it's, but those are, the two big drivers are admin and F&B.
Okay, so when you say fitness, did you do tennis as well, or no?
I played with it, but I don't have enough of a feel
No problem.
of the personnel or the contract labor and the expenses on those sites, so
Okay.
I don't trust those. But I'm pretty, on this admin and the F&B, which are the big numbers, I'm pretty comfortable with, and I don't know how Melissa feels about that.
I would also just recommend just sending it to Belinda,
That's because,
but not then sending to the rest of the board, because that's using Belinda to send, to communicate with other board members, your thoughts about budget stuff. So
okay, can I just, it's just,
Sending it to Belinda.
can I send
Belinda's
it-
information.
can I send it now? During the meeting?
Let's just send it to Belinda.
Okay.
So,
Because that record is then not available for everybody to view. If you just email it out.
Okay,
So just send it to Belinda.
Right.
well, we can put it into the, we can put it into the budget,
If it's in the workshop, that's fine. I have
Yeah.
no problem with that.
Yeah.
But just that's why you just send it to Belinda, not Belinda email it out to everybody.
okay. Well, we can put, okay, yeah. We'll put it in for the budget, we'll put it in for the workshop.
So last year, we started a 5-year, budget recap that we presented to the
Yes.
board. I've updated it to be a 6-year recap this year. So you'll have 6 years of actual budget expenditures, and then separately, I'm gonna just send this year's trend report. So you'll have a trend report just for the general fund for this year as well. So as soon as I have the insurance numbers, I'll send them over to Julie and Melissa so that they can plug in their portion. But other than that, I'm ready. I'm just waiting on the River Club budget.
Great.
And we should be good to go. Thank you.
So, and just a quick question on that then, because we were talking about, unrelated issue and when we could do things. So the schedule then is we have our workshop on the 21st, and then on the 11th is when we go through the final budget and approve it.
Well, it's your proposed, so
Right,
that's
the
your,
trim budget.
your trim, your not
That's a
to
trim
exceed
budget.
budget. Yeah,
But,
we have to have it done before
By
June
the
15th.
Right, okay. So then I think board, we figure then that the 15th is a date that's got to be devoted to budget only. So we're talking about the 23rd for the other thing.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that means
fine.
you'll have your workshop to go over it, and then you'll say your
Yes.
proposed, that's
Yes.
your high water mark.
Yes.
So that it can be, and then you'll set a final hearing, a final public hearing.
Yes, and so on that, can I just ask one more question then, is I think we send a trim budget notice that goes out to everybody. And I-
Yes,
So, yeah, so I
The
was hoping,
timeline starts from the point that you approve your proposed
Yes.
budget. So then I take it from there, because we have to prepare the notices, the legal
Yes.
notices, everything has to go out.
Yeah,
So I have everything calendared based
I know
on
you do.
our meeting dates.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we would start the process, we would prepare the letter, the legal notice. I know it's
Right.
really confusing, but we've worked it in a way where we've made some changes to it.
okay,
So that way it's a little easier to understand, because residents receive it and they automatically think that it's a
Right.
new assessment. It's not a new assessment.
right. So Ken, because I think last year, if I recall correctly, the board had a chance to review that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'd appreciate the chance to review it again.
I was gonna ask the same thing, if we could even have it, yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially
we
if there's certain
reviewed
things
it
we wanna say.
extensively last year because of the language that was incorporated because of the hurricane assessment.
Right,
Because we wanted everyone to understand that it wasn't a separate assessment, it was part of the general fund, even though it was outlined separately in the assessment schedule. So what we're gonna do is, once we have it drafted, we'll send it to everybody for
Great.
review.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a process.
It is a
This
process.
entire thing is a
Governmental
process.
process.
Yeah. So I have everything calendared. I mean, we're ready to get started on, the remaining process for it. We are gonna send Andy, an assessment resolution, not an assessment resolution, a budget
Yes.
approval resolution for review, and that'll be on the agenda so that you can approve it once you approve your proposed budget.
Okay. Thanks.
And that'll start the motion with the public hearing dates. It'll be included as part of your resolution.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions for me? Okay, so we're gonna move into item number 5B, which is the consideration of the proposals for the aerobic room renovation. These are behind tab 2.
Do you need an approval of the website audit or is that information?
No, it's just for information purposes only. It's a clean audit. It just tells you that your site is ADA compliant.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I don't have duplicate copies of these, but I was gonna pass them around, so. I'm gonna start with the fact that I have one pending issue with the renovations, and that happens to be the 220 line for the sander, okay? I have not heard, but what I'd like to do is, go over what I've got so far, and we're basically talking $5,000 for the refurb of the floor, $2,500 for cleaning up the black plates that are on the base, repainting and doing all that stuff, excluding the ceiling. Okay, we're repainting the walls only, closets included. And then I've got a quote for $2,500 for some wall art for floral and fauna. The cost of the acoustic panels, what we're planning on doing is we're planning on putting acoustic panels underneath the TRX stations, just to warm up the room a little bit, okay? And also, create a little bit of so when the TRX things hit, they're not hitting the wall specifically and denting the wall.
And they won't hurt the panels
And they
either,
will
that's
not
my
hurt the
question.
panels. Yeah, they won't hurt the panels. So that's the reason for that. So we're building those underneath the TRX panels. $600, Miguel's gonna do the installation of the acoustic panels. And I'm removing the replacement of the 2 ceiling fans in there. That, without the cost of the electrical hookup, is at $12,391. And what I'd like to do is make a proposal that I have a do not exceeds of 13,000 in order to come up with the fill-in for the 220 panel, or the 220 work line. And I think we can do it for that. That's $860. We might not have to do anything.
What do you mean? I'm not understanding why everybody has, I'm just surprised we need to do electrical work for somebody to.
So what happens is.
It's sander needs a
You don't have
220.
one?
We do.
Yeah.
We've got one in the breaker box, in the electrical room, okay? But there's no outlet, right, to plug into the aerobics room. So we have to, we're either gonna hardwire into the
I
circuit
see.
box.
I see. It's
Okay.
proximity.
It's a
issue.
proximity
It's a
thing,
proximity
yeah.
issue, okay.
And, originally, the assumption was we're gonna run a line into the aerobics room for 220. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. All we're doing is we're trying to find an electrician to do this hookup, have a cord run from the electrical panel and right across from the F&B office and run it into the aerobics room so he
There's a
can
cost
sand.
to it, okay.
Yeah, so these I wanted to share with everybody. If you
Couple other
guys,
questions?
yeah, sure.
So why,
That's-
Those ceiling fans have gotta be ancient, why, can we just do that operationally, is that?
We did those operationally, so
Okay, so
we
we
did
just do
these
those
operationally as well,
Okay.
yes,
What-
yes.
So who's gonna do that? Because those fans are up pretty high.
Yes, so I didn't have it figured in here because that was not part of the reserve. We had gotten a quote from, I want to say Miguel, he was gonna install them for $400. So everything's a moving target. I got some emails and I didn't
Is
share.
Miguel an electrician?
Yeah, we need, I would,
I thought it was Miguel, maybe I'm wrong, hold on. Because I didn't include it in the quote for the reserve for the work, I didn't take a close look at who was actually gonna do the work on that. I can go back and check.
and the fan should be done
Oh,
before the
since
floor
Garrett
starts.
City, Cheryl's gonna.
Now that I've looked at these are the acoustic panels?
No, that's the mirror.
No, that's the other.
Oh, no,
side.
I'm sorry, no, yeah, that's the other side. So what's gonna happen is these acoustic panels are gonna go down here and create that panel.
They're like
look.
And what
slots.
color are they?
They are a natural wood to match the floor.
Okay, and stain resistant kind of
Stain
thing?
resistant.
I just worried about all the stuff that's. gonna
Yeah.
get- Including bodies.
Yeah, including
Okay.
the sweat.
Yeah.
So these are, this is a rendering.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is gonna be shadowing. So like he's got this shadow built in here and he's got these, the palm trees and everything. He's got some fauna along the wall here. We just figure it would warm up the room a little bit.
I got a question for you about this though. Does he have insurance?
Yes,
Oh, he does.
he's a professional. He has a
No, does he have
business.
our liability?
I'll double check. We
And
won't
that'll all be part of the contract.
all be the part of his
Our
contract.
proposal gets that.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that will be, I asked him about that yesterday,
Because
yes.
the question I had on this was, one of these is on a corner, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna be really honest with you, my concern is, when we go to paint the room, this is all gonna get painted over.
Well, Miguel's gonna do the painting first
Yeah.
and then,
But
we're-
that's just gonna get.
Yeah, but if it
Bang.
gets banked up, you can't touch it up.
right, so this is just a rendering. This
Okay.
isn't the exact
Okay.
model he's gonna have. He just threw these together as a sample.
Okay.
So,
You can always put a corner molding on pretty
right.
easily.
And some of this stuff, believe it or not, he can actually paint on, there's acoustic panels, that soft material acoustic panels over the mirrors. He's actually has the paint to be able to paint over that, so it looks very natural.
Struggling a little bit with the number.
Yeah.
Like the 2,500?
Yeah, my only thing
Okay.
is, can we, I mean, I've.
Well, because
Okay.
LaSalle got told we couldn't have $2,000 to look at.
An architect.
An architect, that's where I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
I thought we did it. I thought we.
Well,
did that.
ultimately, yes, but,
Ultimately, but-
ultimately, yes, but we originally asked.
And when
Well, I
and
think
when I asked
originally
him,
nobody knew what direction we were going.
Yeah.
That's why I had an
Yeah,
issue with it.
okay.
So
Okay.
now I feel comfortable, I know what direction we're
Okay.
going. That's why for me.
can we do this? I mean, the room needs to get done, but could we just hold off on the painting of the decorative stuff until we know how, I mean, just obviously we have to do work in this building, and God only knows what this building is gonna be before we start doing decorative stuff inside of that building, because obviously we have to get this building cleared up first before we start spending money on decorations.
Well, this isn't really, it's atmosphere.
Well,
Um,
but it's,
so
but
it's
that-
to attract
yeah,
people into the room, more so than already happens.
I get that.
And
What is the committee, what is it, can you help us to understand what the committee says?
committee loves it.
Okay,
Committee, the committee voted for it, at the time it was 2 to 1.
okay.
But the one has come around.
Is it,
So,
I'm just, you know.
I'll be honest with you, if the electrical hookup is gonna force us to get over that $13,000, because that's what I'm asking for, is a do not exceed of 13,000. This will probably be the first thing that gets dropped, obviously.
I mean, don't get me wrong,
Obviously.
because I feel to some degree, like fitness has been treated like an ugly stepchild,
Okay.
to be blunt.
That's okay, but that's not.
So, so I get it, I get it, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just,
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So we went from a $13,000 floor budget, and we were able to, because I'm in the flooring business and then whatever, I was at $15,000 down to $5,000 by not ripping it out and doing all that stuff. And now the money's getting spent anyway, so it's going for a good cause, and don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, I would hold off on the,
Well, can we just say to Cindy then, the 13,000 and
okay, I'm
then,
fine with that. Okay.
and then,
I guess.
you figure it out, I can't believe that I think it's gonna cost $600. There's no earthly way.
I know, but
And I get it, the committee wants it.
Well,
So, you know, you guys.
yeah,
Okay.
I will be honest with you, this will be what unfortunately will get cut if we exceed that $13,000.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I-
Because then we have to
Fair
take
enough.
care
And
of
I've heard the
things.
fans were an issue, so I would not do the fans. Because I mean, I've heard people complain.
If you can do it operationally.
But if those were done operationally, then the fans in the aerobics room.
Heights are different, it's much higher. Much
Well,
higher.
you're talking about the spend coming from the operational budget versus.
What,
It's a replacement, so it would come from the operations budget.
Right.
It wouldn't have to be part of this
Right.
capital.
Okay, all
project.
right,
exactly.
okay, got it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
so all that like I said, all that I'm asking for is the do not exceed. If you want to make that number different, we make that number different.
I think we're all good with it.
Motion to,
I think
Do
go
not
for it.
Are you authorizing, for any of the specific proposals we have, in the packet, so like the footprint floors? I just want some clarification.
Do you want me to do a do not exceeds on each one of those? I can.
Well, more so, it's just because we do have the different, proposals here.
Okay,
And I just want to know if, which ones you want my office to do contracts for, because since they're all separate companies, I can't do one singular contract.
well, we'll have to do 3 separate contracts, I think. We'll have to do the contract for the Flora painting, the contract for Miguel Liberty Painting to paint the room, and then for footprints. And then I might need a 4th with the electrician. So do you want me to do a do not exceeds on each one of those?
Subject to preparation of contracts plural by council.
Yeah, only just because, since we're gonna have 4 separate.
Sure.
And depending on, some of these are smaller budgets, I don't know, so I was bringing the question up, if it's a smaller amount, does the board even want to?
So
draft
can we
it?
say up to 4 contracts?
we don't need a contract for electrical. I mean, it's either.
We just need to make sure they have the COI.
Yeah.
that includes that.
Exactly.
Okay,
But I have one other question. Who's project managing this?
Good question.
I asked that question.
Because
So
there's a lot of moving
I-
parts here.
I
But
asked-
just
Yeah,
part-time.
I asked Nancy Spakowski, the chairman for Fitness and Pool, to have oversight on the financial aspect of it, because I want to make sure that we have control and nobody's doing anything fishy and funky against it. But would that be something, who would that come from then, from the project perspective? Like organizing, sanding, painting?
I think it should be River Club management. I mean, that's really River Club.
But, yeah, I can tell you right, the fans go first. If you're doing the fans go first.
Right, top to bottom, right?
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you drop anything on the floor, then you can then possibly fix it when you sand it.
Yeah,
But if you sand it, polish it, then drop the fans on it, you're
I
gonna
mean,
go over again.
this is, we pay River Club management to manage the building, and I think I think project management should be River Club management. It's my opinion.
I mean, we, I guess facilities can help, create a timeline of what should go first and how to do it, but
I would like that. If
Yeah.
facilities can give us a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th,
Okay.
I would like that from facilities. And then I think Nancy should coordinate. She'd help with the tiki bar. I don't know how.
But you still have to have River Club.
Yeah, but you still have to have
You
River Club
do.
management.
Absolutely. I mean, that's,
Nancy from a
we
financial.
should not be doing their job.
So then you'll work with River Club management to determine who will be overseeing?
Yes. And then I will give a point of contact.
Thank you.
So they can reach out and work.
All
with it.
right.
Yes. All right, do we need to vote on this? How
Well,
does
make
this?
a motion.
So, and again, this is just so my clarification, because, so we had like the contract for footprints, Liberty,
Mhm.
and Brushes with Destiny. Is that-
Correct.
Those are the 3 that we have right now.
Those are the 3 that we have
Okay.
right now.
And does the board want contracts for all 3 of them? Because some of them, like obviously Brushes with Destiny is $2,500. If we spend like an hour or 2 drafting a contract.
I think the flooring one is the one that needs a contract. The other ones just need to verify the COI.
I think that's right.
COI, right,
Miguel
yeah.
lives in here, so.
That's not so like I'm taking like, we're not spending like 3 or 4 hours.
Sure,
Right.
totally get it.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, so the only one that we want is footprints.
Yes.
Okay.
Good point.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Cool.
So yeah, you can do it as a not to exceed 13 for the whole project, subject to a contract for footprints and subject to insurance for
The other.
Right.
the other vendors.
Right.
All the
I make
So
that
that's
motion. I
the
make that
motion. Yeah.
That's the motion.
I make that, I make that, I motion what he just said.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Thank you, guys.
Aye.
Thank you for the work.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, Mary Taylor and Nancy worked their butts off on
I
this.
know, it's been going on a long time.
Okay, moving forward, we're now gonna move into item number 5C, which is the review of the resident affidavits and SOP procedures going forward.
Yeah, I think that we had pushed this onto this agenda because we had been talking about it during the rules and regulations redo hearing at the last board meeting. So I think this is a carryover. I mean, I had a couple thoughts on it, but I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in first. I don't want to be a bed hog here.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. And we had 8 affidavits, technically we had 9 affidavits, we're down to 8. And I had gone through them and quite honestly, 5 of those 8 were filled out what I would consider to be correctly. Let me just start with the fact that, and I might be wrong here, but did the board ever take a look at the affidavit before it was prepared and ready
No,
for
No.
distribution?
I never saw it.
never saw it.
I spoke to Andy about it in
Okay.
emails, and he said, we're gonna draft one up, but I never saw it when it went out.
Okay, because I questioned the affidavit and how it was prepared in itself, and the fact that it was never really clear that the homeowner should have been participating in the affidavit. And I think that is like what I would say, the start of all the issues that we had, on top of, a couple of other things. And I don't know how to proceed with that, because like I said, 5 of them are correct, 3 of them are in question. Do we throw all 8 of them out and we say we have to start over? What exactly do we want to accomplish? So I'm just throwing that on the table to start our conversation today.
Well, my opinion is I personally think the process needs to be amended. I think I said at the last meeting, I don't think it's fair to put it on staff. Somebody comes in with an affidavit and there's no record of why an affidavit was needed. Did somebody produce something? They didn't produce something. We have nothing for the records. And I've got extra copies of this if you want to see it. This was a form I had passed out.
Yes, I saw this, it was
So
fabulous.
my thinking here is that, let's say, I just moved to Venetian and I come in and I need to prove that I have a Venetian address. I can come in with a driver's license if in fact that works and I'm not a resident of Michigan or something. I could have the deed, I could have a utility bill, I could be a lessee. Or I could be a non-resident member. But I think we need to give staff an ability to check a box and also put a piece of paper into the file, either electronically or paper, that says what it was, because that's the hurdle that has to be met. And then if somebody says, and I know there are some examples of people, if you live in another country and, only one person is on the deed and you don't have a local driver's license and you don't have a bank account here, you probably don't have a doctor here if you're in a place like the UK where it has an NHS, there are going to be reasons why it's going to be difficult for you to produce something. But I think in most cases, somebody should be able to produce something, whether it's a bank statement or whatever that comes here that proves that they live at the address, at least in the time that they're here in this part of Florida. And I think if somebody can't, my personal view is that it needs to come to the board. And the board, because A, I don't think it's fair to staff, but B, I think that the board should have a a record of any precedent that's been created, if there is a question.
So are you saying the affidavit would not be last resort?
I
You're
wouldn't have an
saying this-
affidavit at all. I wouldn't,
What are you gonna do with, let me give you an example. John just sold his house here because he has to move back to England for health insurance. He comes back for 30 days at a time and lives with his girlfriend here.
right,
What does he do? He is not gonna have any of those things.
but he doesn't, if he's living, well, look, I hear you, it's a tricky situation.
He's living here 30 days at a time and then goes back and then comes,
Yeah.
He's not a resident.
she's not a resident, she's a guest.
But he is living with her on the times that he comes here.
But then
Yeah,
he,
but
so,
so
so's a
can
you
guest,
do it-
so's a
But can you
guest.
do a 30-day get? You can.
Yes, up to 42 days.
No, 40, no, you can have a guest for 180 days, 300 days, or whatever. A guest only has a certain number of days privileges at the River Club.
That's true.
But a guest can stay at my house for 3 years and they're still a guest,
That's
they're not a
true.
resident.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's true. That's
And
very true.
because
Uh-huh.
the other challenge I have is if we've already, I think, did we technically throw out that one affidavit?
Like during,
That's
like,
not
That got sent back.
But-
during COVID, okay, all the people that came down to stay with the families,
Right.
because they couldn't be in New York anymore. They were long-term guests, they weren't residents.
No, they were residents.
Well-
Most of them got enrolled as residents.
Well, I think that could be a gray area, but, but to get the other example, I mean, okay, two people live in Michigan, or, okay, even better example, okay. If I just got married, but we were living together up in New Jersey. We both so happened to buy the house together on joint deed, but if I had just done it in my name.
Right.
We're living together in New Jersey, I moved down here, she has nothing, but we have proof that we're living in the same address in New Jersey. So we're a couple in New Jersey, I'm a couple down here. If you're just coming in and out, like I said, what stops anybody from having a relationship, all the widows and widowers have a relationship with somebody in another development that they start having.
I hear what you're saying. My only concern as a board member is, do we want to be debating these arrangements in board meetings? That's my only, I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, I
yeah. That is going to be my caution for you all, is because I understand, I don't want to put it on staff, I want to put it in front of a board meeting, I want to put it before the board. But is this going to be?
We're not asking about relationships, we're asking.
But you are, but that's what it comes down to.
No, I'm asking for proof of resident, I'm asking for proof of that.
Proof that you live with this residence.
Yeah.
That's what we're asking for. We're not asking, I don't care what kind of relationship you have. What I care about is, are you really a resident in that home for that period of time? That's all I'm asking.
With intent to remain, I mean, and I think that's a big key. And one of your colleagues brought that up last year, intent to remain. You have, when you're here, you have to be here. You can't come in and come out, come in and come out. That makes you a
But
guest.
that's a different definition of intent to remain. This just makes me nervous. I, as a board member, I don't know if I don't think I can recuse myself.
That's ultimately, here's the thing, that's ultimately the point I'm trying to make, is that you have to consider how many back and forths this board has had about trying to work through this. And this is just at this point theoretical.
Right.
If you want to take this on and have someone essentially come before the board and essentially prove their residency, that's going to become
How do you prove it? Answer me that. How do you
Well,
prove it?
I have no problem, I'm not crazy about the affidavits. The affidavit as written, frankly, is completely.
I agree with you. I don't like the affidavit. I don't like the
And we also said, we also discussed in a meeting that we were not going to announce to the community that we had an affidavit.
Right, we did.
And then we
Yeah, we
did,
did.
and we did it anyway.
And we did.
And that whole
And
email
in
that
that
got sent,
case, we
that
still
never got
only
approved
have
either.
eight though. I mean, the good news is we only have
We
eight.
do, but
The bad news is I don't like the affidavit. I think the owner should definitely be
well,
on
the owner has to be on there, and I hear what you're saying, Dan, but at the same time, and this is, I'm just gonna say this, in February last year, I sent an email to Andy, with my thoughts that we are a special taxing district, right? And we are elected as supervisors of the special taxing district. And one of our primary duties is to protect the amenities and other services that are paid for by the residents and owners of the special taxing district. And so if we have to spend a little bit of extra time figuring out how to do that, then I think that we should do that.
But it's
I
not,
take it very seriously.
but I understand, but my issue is not the spending of the extra time. My issue is, and what, if we're going to go into this sort of thing is,
Mhm.
if we put people in front of the board to essentially prove themselves. What is our standard? Because number one, I'll be honest with you, I have not even heard like one set definition, and we're like, oh, well, just for residency, but these are my criteria. I haven't really, but this is my issue, is that I even have not heard like what would be.
Well, we could establish, and that's part of what I was trying to do
Yeah.
with the form. You know, you cannot go to the dump on Knight's Trail, right? Unless you have a driver's license to get in there. If you can't get into the dump, you know, if without a Sarasota County license, why can't we establish the same standard? I don't get it.
And
Again, but this is my
We're
point.
government.
And that's the thing, because if we're now saying that this person is, if this person has to come here to prove the residency, and the thing is, how it is even, depending on based on how it's written in your covenants for the River Club and receive these amenities, what's then to stop then someone, if they don't like your decision, to sue you?
Well, anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Right.
But this is my other,
Well-
I'm trying to,
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you the advice, because my concern is that you are opening potentially a can of worms.
Why is
Opening
it very subjective? in
for
my opinion,
subjective
it's
Well,
subjective
but why
terms
is-
that could end up in
Well,
being
let me
sued.
make this one point, if I may. You know, we chalked out one affidavit because the person signed an affidavit saying that she lives at an address outside of here. How is that different from somebody presenting a driver's license that avers that that person lives at another address? How is that different? Why should we keep that affidavit?
What,
We got an affidavit from somebody whose driver's license says that they live at another address.
No, we got an affidavit from somebody who put that they live at that other address on the affidavit.
Yeah.
That was the
Oh,
problem. They
okay.
filled it out
Yes.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
That had nothing
I
to
see.
do,
Oh, I
they filled it
But-
out wrong.
No, I'm talking about Nokomis, but, you know, if somebody's driver's license says that they live at another address 2 miles away, to me, they're not a resident here.
but also remember, it's ownership.
There was.
And
There's no ownership.
But we also have, you also provide, if they're not married, and you can designate people who don't live there.
But they have,
And, but also,
but they have to live here, they have to reside here. We're doing all those things, but everything comes back to you have to reside here. You can't be,
Right,
you know,
can
I
we
don't
let
want to
Dan-
get into
Can we let Dan
relationships.
finish his sentence, please?
please. Ultimately, the board can decide however they want to proceed.
Right.
I'm here for advice.
Right.
That you can decide however you want to go forward.
Yeah.
My point, and honestly, it's been my firm stance for, at this point, I remember these issues even coming up over a year ago.
Yeah.
Because I worked on them over a year ago.
Yeah.
Is that I think you're just getting into trying to define gray areas that I think, and even from the past 2 meetings that I've seen, there is debate back and forth between amongst you on how to determine that. And so that you're going, and if the next step is to eventually, if you do even come up with some standards, then to have someone come in front of you to say, basically, again, prove that you live here, or prove that you're a resident, I think is potentially opening up liability for the district. If you want to go forward with that, again, that is completely your call.
Why is it opening up a liability for this district, but not 2 other districts that you guys are
Exactly.
counsel for in the state?
They don't seem to have-
They don't seem to have this problem.
You create residency definitions for other communities, but you just don't do it for us. I don't, you know.
I don't understand that. So
So why don't you define, why don't you come up with resident, okay, as a legal counsel, forget what we think, you come up with a legal definition for residency that covers a resident actually has to live here when they're here with intent to remain, and come up with something and we'll adopt it.
That's where I'm personally struggling. You have two other properties in the state of Florida that are CDDs that have residency clearly defined.
Yes. And they haven't.
But they haven't been sued. And so this is a concern that you're bringing up to us, a fair, valid one, without a doubt. But I think also a little unfair to be pointing that at us and throwing that at us when you've got two other communities that don't have this problem.
At least two that we know of.
And so that's my question to you is why is it an issue here and not there?
I will confirm which ones they are with my firm.
Okay, that'd be great.
That would help.
Because, and that's the thing, because this is basically just based on the work that I've done here. And these are even just reviewing your rules, your covenants, how it's been established here.
Well,
So again, board can proceed how it wants. I'm just trying to give the advice that I see these concerns.
Well, this is brought up, this is brought up by Cindy, myself, a lot of residents, to Andy, prior meetings before we got on the board, meetings since we've got on the board. We're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with person to come up with, to resolve this. And we keep getting answers that nothing could be done, but you guys are doing it and we're keep paying more legal fees. And I don't understand why we can't, for over a year now, we can't get to the bottom of what you've established for other communities. And we must have $20,000 of legal bills here, and we're nowhere better off than we were a year ago.
So what do you want to do, Rich, just for my edification? I will always be against the board having to review people. That freaks me out. But I would happily adopt this.
And
I would happily adopt that.
we adopt this.
Can you put legalese on this affidavit if you need to?
Well, and it's probably not complete in its current form.
Well, that's what I mean.
Well, let's get the residency issue resolved first, because I think once we get if we put down the definition of resident,
But that's a rules change, right?
Well,
it's not really rules change, we're just defining what's already in the rules,
Well, I think the first thing we need to do, I personally think, because we have people hopefully closing on homes and buying in here. I think one of the challenges we have is we don't have information. I don't know if we have information gathered on, if somebody is requested, do we know, like when I sat down to get my stuff re-upped, did you know that does the system say she provided a driver's license, she provided a vehicle registration?
There was
there
our punch list that we had, and if people didn't have that, we also left the Sarasota County appraisers page open.
But you weren't tracking.
We
what I
were
provided.
tracking that Jill Pissarro provided 2 driver's licenses, 2 registrations, warranty deeds. No, we were trusting that the people came in with that stuff. If people did not come in with that, we had a tool with the appraiser's website, because that's public information, that basically said, Cindy Sneezek is.
That's what we look up to this day, is the Sarasota, that page. And we had a bunch of new people last week.
Right.
And so, that's what we use, is that Sarasota, and then, we haven't had anybody since the affidavits, to say, hey, I ain't got nothing. Well, then, you don't live here.
Yeah.
So we haven't had to use an affidavit, but.
Okay.
Can I make a
Knock on
recommendation? And this is gonna be a tough call, and I understand that this is a tough ask. We've got the 3 affidavits that, even though the affidavit wasn't clear, but there are 3 affidavits that I think that are in question. Do we have any ability to say, you know what, we just can't accept these 3 affidavits because they're not filled out correctly? We did toss one, and there's,
My understanding with the one that got tossed was because they also volunteered.
correct, and I've got copies of the 3 that I'm referring to here, and I will hand them out to everybody, because it looks like, Cindy Sneezek could reside over in Rich Goodman's house. Can you give that to
the problem is with the way that
And
these
these
are
are the
filled out,
3 that I'm talking
anybody
about.
could have filled them out.
Correct. And I don't know how we want to handle these, but those would be the 3 in question to me that I would say, you know what, we need to say these are no good anymore. I don't know how everybody feels about that.
So you're saying, and you base that on the fact that this person is not on the deed?
Correct.
Did not have a driver's license, did not, okay.
Yeah, the person can't there's no, the homeowner there's nothing attaching the homeowner to this address.
There's no, right,
So
like,
it
like
could,
this,
so it could,
right.
so we can get entire
I
Milano,
see.
everybody from Milano can come here and fill this out this way and say, I live here, give me an address, and we have to accept it.
Yeah, I think owners should,
So
I agree
that's the
that these should be
basis of it?
modified.
That's the
Owner
basis
needs
for
to-
why I'm
These
saying
are all
these
non-
three, these
non-homeowners.
last three, there's no homeowner on anything on these at all.
And what about the others, since I haven't?
So the other ones, I have them all, they were either filled out correctly, there was one, where are they?
I'm not crazy about any of them because there's also, I spoke to Keith, there's no record of what they produce.
That's my problem.
So
Here they
we,
are.
so we don't
I
have,
didn't
so
make
Can I
extra copies.
I'm just
So-
looking back.
whoever, at the time, whatever the documentation was that got them approved is now in the wind, and we don't know. So if somebody comes back in here now with an affidavit filled out similarly, we don't know the process upon which those 5 people were approved versus this new person who wants to be approved. So there's no precedent, we don't have any information for precedent, so we don't know.
Okay, so hang on. Why is this one okay? I'm trying to go through, like, I haven't looked at these, so this is.
Yeah, I really didn't know what I was looking at.
Thomas Clark's the homeowner, he is saying that this individual lives here.
Got it. So this one actually worked like, maybe that's what it was supposed to work?
Right.
Good.
She's,
The homeowner.
right, that's the way it was supposed to work.
But still, we have.
This
left-
guy actually has mail coming to this address.
Oh.
So he
okay.
didn't need to fill one out.
Right.
He
This
just
is what
plain
we
old
need
didn't
to
need to
know.
fill one out. He gave us
Okay.
mail, he filled one out anyways. This one, homeowner, the people that are living in there.
Okay,
And this one's the one that we blew away.
okay.
Yeah.
So
All right,
then-
so these, the only thing you are trying to accomplish here is that the homeowner should have been the one who filled it out?
I'm just saying
At
those are
least-
invalid. Yes, because the homeowner did not participate in that at all.
I get it. So what's the remedy then? Are we asking then that these be completed differently with the homeowner filling it out?
No, we default to the sheet that Jill's got.
So we're gonna change the rules for these 3 people
Well, that's what I'm
and
saying.
not for
Well, that's what I'm
those
saying.
4.
That's
That
what I'm
doesn't
saying.
work
I
for
think
me
they
either.
should all be
Be
thrown,
consistent.
they should all be thrown out because we don't
They all should
have,
be thrown out.
we
Okay,
have,
I don't care if
we
you
have
throw
no,
them
we
all
have
out
no,
and you go with
yeah,
this.
because
I'm
we
just
have no
saying, let's be
basis.
consistent.
Okay,
I
all right,
agree.
all right, I'm good with that.
And, just a thought I'm gonna throw out there, rather than having, a full court press tribunal, if somebody is having a challenge, could we designate somebody on the board who's able to help, the process, if somebody comes and doesn't have, the appropriate thing that will fill out the form. If a staff member gets into some difficulty and says, I can't get this form filled out.
So you're saying if we go with this exclusively? If we go with
Yes.
this exclusively and someone doesn't have any of this, so they can't fill it out, which might be the case with all 7 of these.
Could be, yeah.
Or 8, how
Yeah.
many are there now?
There's 8, yeah.
Go to the chair,
Then what do we-
let the chair, if they want to go public tribute, go to the chair.
You're still putting Jill in a position of having to decide on somebody's,
Well, because in my opinion, we have to
But
be-
I'd rather do that than have an employee do it. Somebody's
Well, I
got to
think,
do it.
and we have to, if we're establishing a precedent, allowing somebody in, then I think we need to be consistent. That's one of the challenges I have, is that we do have to be consistent. And so, I don't know.
I mean, if you don't want to have a tribunal, I'm all for having just one person do it.
I will never be that person.
And ultimately, if they
Put that
speak
right
for
out
the board,
there.
it's the same thing.
Same
right?
thing,
It's going to
yeah.
be the same thing.
No, but I'm saying they don't have the person.
We're all
that
on
have-
the hook.
But I would know,
No,
but what is that process even, like, would that not be a public then? Because honestly, if that would be another concern I have, if you are designating a person to
Right.
vet this and not at a public meeting.
Right,
Oh,
right,
okay.
yeah,
all right.
okay. Well, I say, my recommendation then is we throw all 8 of these out. And we start with this
Yes.
form that Jill came up with, which I think is a
Okay.
solid form.
Okay.
and we, reach out to these people and we have them fill this out.
And also,
But could we have this form?
It would need to be modified
Yeah, that's
to.
what I mean.
Yeah.
The word modified wouldn't come to my mouth, yes.
It it would need to be modified and then, considering, I would then have it brought back for approval.
Okay.
Do you need a blank of this? Or you want
I
me?
mean, I have that.
Oh, okay, fine.
yeah, I would also.
It's the RFID tag ones, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just on the, also, just for the, for let's see, we have to make sure that lease is POA approved first before it gets to us.
And I think
Yes.
it's, yeah, because when I was filling out, creating this form, my sense of the process was that, once you got past the RFID piece, the amenity piece just happened, right? So does the amenity piece just have to be on here at all? Or I guess it should be. And I also think we need to know who completed the form, right? You should be saving things
I
like
think it
this.
should be the owner.
I think it should be the owner.
Okay,
I think absolutely it should be the owner.
okay.
And if you want the owner and the resident, if they're an adult, to both complete it, that's fine too, but I just, yeah. Well, of course, it's not an affidavit, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if they're kids, then, but,
I have these.
Oh, you
Okay,
have
so
those?
you- so
Okay.
then you
Yeah, I
can-
got those.
So,
Okay.
so you can start with that, Dan, then, is that right? And then I think after that happens is when we figure out how to contact people. and
How to
say,
contact
We
these
need to, we're doing this process. Yes,
So, I understand, so when we have somebody that, do we bring the affidavit after it's already filled out to the board? And you
There is
approve
no
it?
affidavit.
It wouldn't be an
It's-
affidavit.
There is no more
It's
affidavit?
gonna be this, it's gonna be this form, or some
Okay,
version
so
of
if they
this form.
can't check any of that off, if we can't check it off,
right.
Then they have to come to
then,
us.
then you have to wait for the board meeting to come to the board meeting to do.
No, I will not be here if that's gonna happen. I don't think this is a tribunal. That is not our role. That really, I have a concern with that. So maybe we just have this filled out first and see if there's any that can't complete this.
Yes.
And if there's
Okay.
any that can't complete this,
Okay.
maybe I don't want them to come here, I don't want them to argue.
Right,
You know?
Okay,
right.
I'm good with that,
Right.
that makes sense.
Okay,
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. So the next steps, Dan, you'll have that done by the next meeting?
I'll advise Andy so we can have a form put together.
What
The
do we-
question,
What do we do in the meantime?
well,
He's
wait,
got us.
Nothing, we have to wait.
Okay,
but you had a question now.
well, that actually, I think, Cindy, I think you just answered my question because at this point, the people have, even if you don't want to keep these affidavits as they are,
If the person that fills this out,
Hold on, let
Hold on.
Dan
Oh,
finish
sorry.
his thought.
if this point they followed the process that was provided.
Right.
If ultimately you want to throw it out, my concern is that mean they're going to be deactivated for all the amenities?
We'll
My-
deactivate them until,
I would.
The short answer is no.
I would-
My advice, yeah, because my advice would be, since they followed the process
They
that
did.
was in place,
Yes.
is keep them.
Right, until, yes.
until we reach out to them and let them know that they've got to refill this out. We're not saying that, we're basically saying, once we make this active, they need to now come in and do this to have their amenities. So I think once we get that finalized, I think once we get this document finalized, then we reach out to the 8 people and say, look, we need to have you come back in. These affidavits were not set up the way they were intended to be, are bad. So this is the information we now need.
Hey, I just didn't want people
yeah,
next tomorrow.
No, my God,
No,
no, no,
We
no,
won't
no,
do-
no.
We won't be doing anything until we see the revised.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Not affidavit. What is
Well,
it?
Form,
Form.
The form,
the dreaded form.
the dreaded form, yeah, we're just gonna call it the Jules dreaded form.
because,
so we're gonna get that form and we'll keep it on file, or scan it in to, because there's nowhere in TechWave to put it. Maybe there is.
There might be.
There might be a place to put forms.
and the form, and it's supposed to be a scan of whatever form of the identification they used, whether it's a license or the mail or something like that. license, you gotta be a little bit careful scanning in, maybe you black out a bunch of numbers, but you show that they had a license.
Yeah, I think you just note in there, Florida driver's license.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay,
I
all
think
right,
so
okay,
too.
that-
I think that's
okay,
just a footnote.
just a footnote,
technically.
okay,
That's just a
that's
Yeah,
footnote.
okay,
It's
all
a
right.
field,
Yeah.
it's not any information.
Isn't it on that?
But then, but it's on the form then, if that's the case, it's on the form, then you don't have to know.
Let's check it out.
As,
If you
as long
scan it in.
as long as you just scan the form in, you'll have that information.
I think scanning the form in is plenty good, because it's got the signature required on there, as long as that is uploaded, if we
Right.
get it uploaded
That's
in the
it.
tech way, we
That's all
can
you
look
need.
into that, so, yeah. Okay,
We'll have to look on TechWave to see where that is.
yeah. I can talk to you about that. We
Okay.
can look at it later. Okay, cool. All right. Does anybody need a break? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
I gotta
we're
dry
gonna
off.
take a 10-minute break
I gotta
at
dry off.
11:39
I gotta
a.m.
dry off now too. Jesus.
Did you spill all over yourself?
Well, you know what, the ice came crashing through and
we're about to go back on the record.
I get,
That's why I don't want to.
no, I get it.
Don't
Okay.
care, don't want.
So we are back on the record at 11:49 a.m. We are gonna move into item number 5D, which is the continued discussion and consideration of the proposal for necessary repairs and painting of the River Club exterior. There are 2 proposals behind tab number 3 for your review.
Okay, I guess that's me. So I believe everybody has now taken a tour around the building.
Yes.
Unfortunately, as we can now tell, it is deteriorating dramatically. And we need to address the issues. We've had these guys out here so many times to create so many proposals and so many changes and so many whatever. We're at a point right now that unless we're really going to start telling these guys we're not going to be able to negotiate and get one guy here, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
So we have one proposal where they're much more detailed about the repairs to the towers than the other company. We're not completely comfortable that we fully understand Artistry's extent of what they're covering for the front tower versus the additional T&M. Artistry is, so they're cheaper on the front, but expensive on all the out structures. Sustainaire is more expensive and detailed about doing the main buildings, but then inexpensive about the out structures. What I'd like to do is get the board to approve about $140,000 for all of these things and see where we go. Because what I'm suggesting is we need to discuss with Sustainaire and Artistry the full extent and expenses to get the main River Club building back to where it is. And there's, like I said, there's a discrepancy in price, so I can't really identify which one is better at this point, because I can't, these guys have been out here 6 times and have done 10 proposals. The out structures, if we go with Artistry, let's say, he's too expensive for the out structures, I would never give him those prices for the outbuildings. I think those prices are crazy. So I want to have $140,000 budget to sit down to be able to go to these people and negotiate down the main building and then the out structures and get this thing moving. Because we have to get this done over the summer. If we don't get this done over the summer, we're going to hit rainy season. This is going to affect obviously also the pool. Because when you start putting up scaffolding by the pool, the lap pool will be an issue. There may be an issue walking through the pool, the pool main gate. It's going to be an issue walking in the front of the building, so we're going to have people walking different, the sides or whatever. So it's best to do this during off season.
Do we have to do the tiki bar in the guard house?
The tiki bar does not have to be done, but the wall behind it has never been painted. So if you want to leave it that way, that's fine. I think the guardhouse should be painted. It has not been painted in 20 years, neither has the tennis shed. And the only reason I'm saying painting the tiki bar is worldly gray and it's kind of purpley. So it may show up.
As an increment, it's a tiny number.
Yeah, it's a small, I don't care if we paint the tiki bar or not,
Well, it's $11,000.
No, that's Artistry's, and that's what I'm saying. I would never use Artistry for the outbuildings. Sustainaire was like $1,000.
Oh.
Tiki bar is $520 for the tiki bar, new color with Sustainaire. So that's what I'm saying. I would use so if I can't use Sustainaire is not just going to paint the outbuildings without the main building. But I can then get Miguel or something, but if we go to Artistry, let's say, for the main building, I'm not going to give him the outbuildings. I would go to Miguel or somebody like that to get a much better price.
Who do you have more confidence in from a vendor perspective?
They've both been pretty good.
Yeah?
They've both been very responsive. They both have a little bit different approaches of how they're going to do some stuff. They've both been very informative. My feeling is whoever comes to us with the best price is going to get it. I don't have a preference. The committee doesn't have a preference. They've both been responsive and different.
You're saying this is not best price because you don't have approval?
Well, I've got to go back and beat them, we've got to go back and beat them up some more, and like I said, I just haven't been able
Well,
to do that.
let me interject, because I think it was before you got on facilities. When I go back, I'm pretty sure, when I go back to when we had negotiated, well, I say we, the facilities committee negotiated to get the hurricane roll downs for the tiki bar, they got a not to exceed from the board that was a fairly.
27,000,
Right, and they went back and they put the screws on them.
got it for
like
20.
Nobody's business. And that's how it,
We told.
that's how it went
We
down.
took Footprints' original bill,
Yeah.
the original quote was $5,700. We went back and said, it's yours for $5,000. So I just can't, without a board approval, I mean, we knew we were gonna do that one. This has been ongoing.
So why don't we just tell you it's approved not to exceed 100,000?
I like the way you think, Cheryl.
I'm just saying, I don't know where I can get them down to. I believe I can get them down. I'm just saying, of course, I'm gonna get them down to the lowest number possible.
So could we give you a lower, because I have to say, I think if my house looked like the club looks, I would be running around and saying, we gotta get on
We gotta get
this.
this done.
So,
And I tell you right now too, there will be work on T&M. Because
Yeah,
we
no doubt.
just don't know,
Yeah.
we just don't know what we don't know yet.
Right.
When you start going into those soffits and start, we see a hole now, but that whole thing may be all rotted out and just not completely rotted out to the visual point yet. So there's gonna be a lot of extra work going on in here. I just can't even tell you what it's gonna be.
So let me ask this. Obviously, this was not something that was budgeted for in this.
Well, it's a reserve.
It's a reserve item, but just because I'm not familiar with this, where do we get the money from to pay for this? I mean, it has to be done. It has to be done.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm just
Well,
Cheryl's
asking.
got her hand.
Okay, yes.
Okay, two possibilities that I would like to throw out there. One is, we already agreed not to do the cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
That's $200,000
Oh, okay,
in reserves.
okay.
So
Okay.
we could technically use that money from the reserves,
The
except it's a
reserves are-
different account.
There's a lot of confusion as it relates to your reserves. They're not straight line reserves, they're pooled.
Right.
So
Okay.
as a board, you can make a decision as to whether or not you just want to move forward with the project, you can. If you're not gonna do the cul-de-sacs, you do have the funds.
Exactly.
It just,
Okay.
you have to.
Well, we also have,
The funds-
well, this year, veranda furniture was on this year. Why not do veranda
But I'm not
furniture?
even talking even about the little stuff.
Okay.
That's a big
No, that was
project.
that's $40,000. Veranda furniture was $40,000.
Right, but I'm saying the cul-de-sacs is 200.
Right.
It covers kind of the whole thing, and we know we're not gonna spend that anytime soon. My
Okay,
second question is, when we did the hurricane assessment, it was for hurricane damage, right? Was it specific to landscaping?
No,
No.
no.
Because a lot of what we see here is potentially hurricane damage on this building, so we are also underspent on the assessment, so I'm also wondering if we can use the assessment
okay.
to pay for this, because a lot of this stuff the buildings are beaten up from the
Oh,
hurricanes.
they're bad, yeah,
So
yeah.
that is my second question.
You can.
I mean, I don't care where the money comes from. We can decide that. I just know from a physical standpoint
We
that
gotta
this,
get on it.
that this, and just also, in a flip side, we are doing a horrible job in terms of maintenance. The pool deck is scheduled to be replaced in 2030, $270,000. The reserve people said, you need to seal it in 2022. It never got sealed. In 2024, they said, you gotta seal it now, so you didn't do it in 2022. We didn't do it. It's now 2025, and now we have people, Dave from the pool guy?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
He went out, he went out there and said, it's not, because we wanted him to get us a rough idea of, don't even bother wasting time, it's shot. So we're letting things go.
Can I get
Okay.
Can I get back to, so when I take a look at the roof between a couple of the structures here, a little solid and whatever else, it looks like a 45-year-old horse.
Yes,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
How are we addressing that
Well,
along before we do any
Well, we-
However, the roof inspection didn't even,
I know,
Point
there's
that
not.
out.
I know
I
that,
kept looking for it,
and I
and I
brought him,
couldn't
I had him come back again, I called up Ron to have him come back and look at that again specifically, if they missed it, because they did mention the flashing, have the
Yeah.
flashing,
Yes.
but did not pick up the roof pitch. They also, the reason that started as its whole thing was in the front tower, there's blue spots
Yes,
underneath,
Yes.
but there's no drip lines of blue coming down. So the blue has to be coming from within, and we wanted them to come look at that, and they never looked at that. So now they're coming back.
So my question is, do we need to do those roof repairs before we paint?
Possibly, probably, the roof repairs need to get done. I mean, whether we paint first and then do some roof repairs, or it's, exterior paint, if we have to do a little exterior paint touch up for the roof, I mean, it's not, it's way up there, it's not, it's not like it's over here.
Depending upon what they have to do, if they have to fix the sway, that could be significant.
Right,
When are
right.
they coming back?
I reached out to
So,
Juan,
okay.
over the weekend,
Okay.
and he says he's gonna get them, come back and have them
Okay.
look at those
Okay.
things.
I think we need to talk about the project and whether or not it's necessary, and I think funding it is not. Ken might disagree with me, I don't know if he's still on the line, but I don't think funding it, and I do believe we can use hurricane, because the
Okay.
more I walked around
Okay.
this building, the more I thought
Yeah,
this building got a lot beaten
yeah.
during those storms.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I would be comfortable with moving forward to try and get a quote that we can, so my concern is, I don't know what you're looking for not to exceed. I mean, this is coming out at what, 135?
Yeah.
Should we give a lower number to
Well, I
Cheryl's
mean-
first point?
I mean, okay, Sustainair to do the main building is, yeah.
Price with them of
You have more added,
141.
that's why I keep asking.
141.
Yeah, I think I got the wrong. I got the old quote. He was also trying to get these guys to quote them out in a format that made sense to us, because they kept on doing it in their formats, and we had, and listen, they've done like 30 quotes, because no matter how many times we would sit with them and tell them this is how we want it done, they would not get us exactly what we wanted.
Well, plus we don't know, one is with duration, one is with Emerald Rain.
Well, they're both gonna be Emerald Rain.
Okay,
We're
okay.
doing Emerald Rain for both. We're gonna put the mildew and the bug repellent in it as well. So the mildew lasts for several years. The bug repellent lasts for several years. This way, for the first few years, you're not gonna see mildew in that. The rain fresh prevents, only requires a hosing to get it clean. So anytime it rains, all the exterior will just come clean. So you're gonna save on all the power washing that's gonna be needed all of these years over and over and over again. And also, actually speaking of power washing too, on the roof report, it showed there's a lot of mold and mildew up in the roof. If we had that done not 3 months ago, or
A little more.
yeah, Miles, I guess just 2 miles was, so maybe 6 months ago, I don't know where we have such a mess up there on the roof with mold and mildew in 6 months. So I don't know if whoever did it did a bad job, or,
What percentage do you realistically think you can get off of this quote?
10?
So
10%.
that's exactly what I thought, so I would be okay with a not to exceed 130,000.
Okay.
It works for me.
That, I'm good
We'll
with that.
we'll tell them that's the number, and if you want it, that's the number.
Make
And like I
it-
said, and if we decide to split it up and give one to the other, I'm not gonna give, and we're over it, I'll take it, if the main buildings, let's say the main building comes in at $100,000, and then they've got, one guy wants $40,000 for the other work, I'll just say, fine, I'll give you the $100,000, and then we'll go to them again. Or somebody else to bid on those other
Then
structures.
my question for Dan then is, are we best advised to have a motion of this type since we have people negotiating?
So what I was going to recommend was that you designate Mr. Good, you said you're not to exceed amount,
Yes,
and then designate Mr. Goodman to, if that's who he wants,
I see.
to negotiate on behalf
okay,
of the board,
Okay.
for the best price, subject to,
preparation of contract.
Contracts, yeah.
Okay, so is that what, so is that,
Works for me.
okay, so You want to make a motion, or you make a?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Not to exceed 130,000.
Right, subject to council preparation of
Subject to
contract.
preparation.
And designate Mr. Goodman to,
Yes.
negotiate
Yes.
on,
Yes,
behalf, because then ultimately, once the contracts are signed, because ultimately Jill, you'll be the one who signs it,
yes,
but,
yes. But we need agent, I guess, agency.
well, then that way it's in the record.
Yes,
That way it's in the
understood.
minutes to say that the board authority has been designated over,
Yes.
otherwise,
Understood.
all five of you
Right.
it's just easier that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right,
Is there a
so
second?
I'll make that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
So Cheryl, your suggestion about hurricane damage, I can see how that can apply to the towers, especially the front tower. And I suppose you could rationalize the back tower as well. I don't appreciate how the entire project, especially the outbuildings and all of that can come under the hurricane assessment. I don't think that's appropriate.
How would you, so you would just take the towers out then?
I'm sorry?
You would just fund the towers through the hurricane assessment?
Yes, that would be my suggestion.
Not the main building.
And then the main building would be the
Reserve.
cul-de-sacs.
That's not even split on here. So then the main building would go to regular reserves, but keep in mind that we said whatever was left over from the hurricane assessment after the hurricane damage was completed would go into reserves.
Yes.
So it's kind of half a dozen of one, six of another. I don't know that, I think we're
And,
picking at straws and,
but again, we also have a lot of things that are not happening this year. Like, we have parking lot poles that was in this year, that was done last year. We have $40,000 of veranda furniture that's not happening this year. There's about $150,000 of stuff that's not happening this year.
Or in the future, the reserve is a bundle. It's a pool.
right, it's a bundle.
No, I get that, but so we're just moving.
Cheryl, I want to go back to Cheryl's point about spending that $1.4 million. We don't yet know what other things are gonna be charged against that, do we?
As far as
What
where,
about the tree replacement, the
will you hear me if
Benito?
I do this?
Why not?
So what we know is the landscape list that was originally prepared. We know that we're coming in at least $300,000 under on the Laurel Road component of that. So if you look at the totals, so, and what we said is we would go through that priority listing and what was left would go into reserves.
No, I agree. Maybe it's just a timing difference, but it just seems hard to rationalize to residents that we're retaining because of hurricane damage.
Oh, and I don't think that's how we rationalize it. I'm just talking about where these funds will eventually end up when we finish all the hurricane damage and we are coming in under what we had anticipated. That was my only comment.
Yeah, because I think otherwise we're being sentimental about money, and money isn't sentimental.
Right, I think do I think it needs to be done? If that's the question, I absolutely think it needs to be done after looking at this building.
I mean, just this year, we have $22,000 in the bar area. We have $21,000 for kitchen equipment, which I'll get to later, which we probably need. We have $12,000 in the security system.
Rich, I understand all that, so that doesn't mean you won't need it next year.
Right.
So.
I understand that, but
My only question is
just keep moving.
how we address the spending of it, and I realize that anything that is remaining will go into reserves. Then the question becomes, where in reserves do they go? I thought they would end up in the general reserve, but if we can put some into the River Club reserve for amenities, then that's where it'll end up. I don't know how that
Okay,
ends up getting determined.
yeah, we can. The board can, I don't,
Did
Belinda,
we-
I don't think that there's a stricture on us about, if it was in the general fund operating budget, which is where it went into, we could shift it from River Club to River Club from general fund. Yeah,
I mean, your reserve and your
Even
general
though-
fund are one fund.
Right, it's one
Even
fund.
though the River Club has a different stakeholder group than the general fund?
No, it doesn't.
The general fund doesn't have the
All
golf course?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay, okay,
Golf course doesn't even play into us at all.
okay.
Well, we collect taxes.
We collect taxes from them though,
Right.
that's my point.
But that's not, yeah, but that doesn't,
We did have a little bit of that discussion though, didn't we?
Yes. I just want to make sure.
So, we were talking about that in terms of use of funds.
Yes,
So I think this is where funds would go into rather than come out of.
okay, as long as the stakeholder, because the golf course contributes to the general fund from
Yeah,
a
but-
tax perspective. They don't contribute to the River Club fund.
Yeah, but they won't be shorted.
As long as they're not shorted.
and they don't get anything. I mean, they get to use the land, that's what they get.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Yeah, for all
I
the
mean-
weeds.
I just think of them as different stakeholders. That's
It's
all.
like they have a mobile home on our property.
Okay,
I like it.
got it.
Okay, so.
Okay, thank you. I'm
So
sorry.
then, Ken, are you generally happy if we talk about the two tower, the cost of the two towers get assigned, if you will, to, the accounting that we should be providing to the community of the hurricane assessment spend? Are you satisfied with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So that way we can, because people will be asking, well, how much have you spent? Then I think at least we can say, we all agreed that the towers only are coming out of that. Okay, thanks, that's really helpful.
And I'll make sure that when they negotiate, we'll get a breakdown between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Did we vote?
Not yet.
Any
No.
further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Ken, are you in favor or opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
So the motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against.
Now, before we leave this wonderful topic,
Thanks a lot.
color.
Oh,
Did you speak to the architect?
I haven't seen him yet.
But, I mean, I do believe the community, this is a big one. People look at this every single day, and I think the community should also weigh in on color. Just like they would weigh in
Well,
on,
how'd you
we're asking them
how'd
to
you
weigh
pick the
in.
color for the tiki bar?
I don't know, I think it was in the original plans, actually, and it was a sub-project.
How do we ask them to weigh in?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. So, remember what we talked about before, that in that little round alcove in the bar area, we would put things to say, this is the anticipated color. And plus, I want to talk about the fact that I think the color that's in that proposal is a little dark.
Well, that's what I said, somewhere between the color of my house and your house, so.
Yeah.
And I needed the color, so I gave him, I know the color of my house, so I gave him that color, but I agree, it's probably too dark.
For this building,
Yeah.
this building's so big. I
No,
think it's a
yeah,
little dark.
exactly, the bigger the building,
So-
the dark
Do
more
I think it
impressive
needs
it
to
was.
be taupey tones? Absolutely.
Well, so what about a suggestion, rather than asking everybody to weigh in, could we send an email out that says, here are 2 choices, if you feel strongly, let us know.
You could even do a survey monkey.
Good
Yeah,
survey,
Just a
monkey.
quick survey monkey.
Quick survey monkey, here are the 2 colors. Pick one and vote.
And also post it up on the new TV, color A, color B, just so people can see it bigger
I
and
just
lighter.
want to
in
talk
person.
about that, because I don't want to paint the building and have some big uproar, but hey, nobody asked me.
I was, like I said, I always said it was gonna be I always thought it should be in somewhere in the taupe tones. And I always said my house, your house, and the problem with the tiki bar is worldly gray is
Yeah.
purple.
Yeah.
And even if you go to Sherwin
Yeah, I agree, I don't.
even if you go to Sherwin Williams website,
So
it
can
says
you
it's got
guys
a
come
purple
up
hue.
with 2, I'm happy to run them past John at AOD
Yeah,
County,
sure.
and then we'll see if I
Well,
can have a survey
I'm
monkey.
gonna
It's
we'll have
a
Sherwin Williams,
one
I have them
question.
create 2 new renderings to go a little lighter and then
Right, okay.
more
And
lighter
only 2
again.
colors, not 7 like we have on the outside currently. Only 2 colors, white and.
Yeah, that's what it is right now, it's 2
Not
colors.
7 like we
No,
have
it's 2
outside.
colors, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I think, just my own opinion on that is you're gonna do all the outbuildings, you're gonna do the guardhouse, all of that. You've also got a welcome center and a golf club building that are gonna be different colors. You've got condos next to the, River Club that are different colors.
That kind
I think there ought to be more than two choices. I think one choice should be something similar to what we have,
Agree.
just so people
I think
can
that's
can
good. I
differentiate.
think so too, yes. One of the colors should be the
Not maybe
original.
quite as gold.
Right,
Yeah.
something close to the original color, yes.
which is why.
Something closer to the walkway. See,
Yeah,
it's
more
not
of
so
a-
gold, it's
yeah.
more,
That's kind of light, because if you go that light, it's gonna get dirty.
No, she means you mean the goldish, right? Not the.
yeah, like not right next to the tower.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Like a
I'm just
parchment.
saying, just something that has a little of the hue to it,
Mhm.
not because some people are.
yep. I think we should definitely go with something
Is
close to the
River
original.
Club- Is the
And
River
then-
Club gonna maintain the two-tone look, where we've got some accent colors around a lot of the trim?
Probably not.
I would stick with one color myself.
Me
I would
too.
too.
And then yeah.
Yeah, with the trim and then,
The trim and one color.
Trim in the main color of the
because the
building.
problem, the problem
Yes.
you run into is the maintenance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on, we're gonna move into item number 5E, which is the continued discussion on member events.
Yeah, this is really, really fast. This is like a 45-second item. So you may recall, supervisors, we discussed at the last meeting, the resident events and making sure that the resident private events would be welcoming to residents, and may also at the same time making sure that any costs incurred by a resident for a private event would be incurred by them. So I sat down with Stephen, and he's got a really good form. I think he already has a couple of bookings made with people, so there won't be, so Vesta has a new form, there won't be a room charge per se, because it just didn't go down well with people. It will be clear that what happens is it's gonna be based on labor setup, it'll be a blended rate. So if somebody has a less complicated setup, it's gonna be a less expensive event than if it's a very complicated setup. And then finally, if they're not gonna member charge it and there's gonna be a credit card fee, then they would have to also incur that, then that will be, that's a notation on the form. So then, I feel confident that River Club staff has the elements they need to be sure that, people are gonna be paying appropriately, and I think people will be happy with it, but my suggestion is that there are two things we need. I think that we need a little bit of policy around it, and then we need to send out a resident blast. So I've talked to Stephen about that. I apologize, I meant to have it ready for this meeting, but I just kind of got behind some of my own events here. But Stephen's going ahead and doing it. I think what I'd like to do is in the next 4 weeks or so, be able to send an email out to residents and say, we welcome having your events. You may have heard there was a room charge, but this is how we're doing it. These are some policy items we just asked you to consider, and please book your events.
So these would not interfere with what would be normally open to River Club days and evenings and things like that?
Well, so we would encourage people to use the club when there's not something currently scheduled.
Okay.
So for example, if somebody says, I want to have my kids' bar mitzvah on, burger night, then, well, unless, it would have to be a very, very significant cost, right? I mean,
Okay.
I think the intent here is to encourage residents to use the club when it's not otherwise booked. So for example, if every other Saturday we're gonna be doing something here like music bingo or murder mystery, then we have Saturdays that are opened up to residents because we've already got some staff in because of the tiki bar, et cetera. And that's gonna be the encouragement that will be in the blast that goes out to residents.
But if you booked an event that, let's say you wanted something on Broken Night, you would have to buy out, in addition to the event that you're
There's gonna be a
doing.
cost, there's gonna have to be
You
a
would have
cost
to
to
put
it.
an
They're
extra
gonna have
cost in to buy out
Okay.
the profit of.
But it's not gonna happen that way. Here's where the challenge is gonna come. If you've got a group of 50 ladies who wanna come in on burger night, for example, and they want a private room, they wanna all come in at once, but they don't wanna have to pay separately for, service, et cetera. That's a challenge because you've got 50 people all coming in at once. And so they're gonna get bad service, and also the people in the dining room are gonna get bad service, and that's where the staff, Julie and I have talked about this to some extent. I will be working with people to say, if you wanna come in on a burger night, that's great, but we're gonna set up a burger buffet for you. And you are probably gonna need 2 or 3 servers, because you're gonna have people wanting drinks, et cetera, and they're gonna have plates cleared. So there is some service to it, but it's gonna be more of a customized thing rather than just slamming somebody with a room fee that doesn't necessarily make sense. So Stephen actually looked at a form that had several things on the same day, so he could try to say, well, if we've got this going on at the same time, how do we work the labor? So I think they're onto it. I think the main thing is we want residents to feel welcome, and they're not just getting slammed with a room fee, and that the charge is going to be reflective of what the actual cost is, and not something that is not understandable and seems unfair. And that we need to communicate that. So that's what I wanted to tell you. That's all I had to say. Okay. All right, that's that.
Thank you, Joe.
It's done.
Next item on the agenda is item number 6A, which is the consideration of the minutes of the Board of Supervisors meeting held on April 14th, 2025. Are there any questions, comments, and/or changes to the minutes as presented?
Nope.
We're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Ken?
Aye. Aye.
Hey, before we move to the next thing, Rich, did you need something on geothermals? You sent us around something about
I saw that
geothermals.
too, because there's an approval already from last meeting.
Correct, the 7,800, wouldn't work,
I forgot.
but, thank you for reminding me about that,
Yeah,
then. So this, if I read this correctly, the guy wants to go down 60 feet deeper than where we're at right now. The other estimate said we're going down only 20
Yeah.
feet deeper from where we're at.
So this is a new estimate. Okay, gets complicated. So
Oh, man, I got a hard stop.
there's only one company that really does all this work.
Right.
So if you call 82 people, you go back to the same person.
Right.
But this is through Dave, because we're gonna have Dave GC it, because this company
Okay.
that does the work is kind of strange, to say the least.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You can't really get a straight answer. So rather than us trying to figure out how to get it done, we figure that we may be paying Dave a little bit extra, but he's gonna GC it. He's gonna be responsible to make sure it gets done the right way. We're going down 60 feet, not 20, because right now it's sucking in air, and we're afraid if it keeps on going down, we're gonna be having this problem again.
Well, that's what I asked the engineer the last time,
Yeah,
when I brought this
exactly. I
up.
remember that, yeah.
I specifically said, are we going deep enough?
So this is the recommendation
Okay.
from Dave and also the geothermal people.
So this is more money.
It is more
Yeah,
money,
so-
because it's.
I don't remember.
Like $4,000?
Yes, like 4,000 more.
Yeah.
But we have, I don't know why, but we have geothermals in for $30,000 last year, this year, and next year. And I don't know if we have other geothermals here, which I haven't figured out, but we have $90,000 for geothermals. If this is the old geothermal, we just saved $80,000 because it's, when are we doing that?
So if we already had a prior approval, do we need,
A revision.
how do we do that?
I would, at least on my end, since this does not appear to have been on the
No, so we have to
agenda,
open it up.
Oh,
for
gotta
public
open
comment.
open up for public
Okay.
hearing. And I don't know what the original approval of it was, but we would at least need a new approval, because I don't know if we had I just don't know if we had a contract previously done and this needs to be
No,
added to
I
it.
don't think the contract was
I don't
done.
think a contract was done,
No.
no.
Well, is it in the minutes?
There was a conversation that we had and.
Well, I brought it up, yeah, to the engineer, in the engineering, so it would be in the engineering section.
So if I make a motion for this amount, for $11,800,
It was 7,800.
Right, so it's about $4,000.
Yeah, and it was on April 14th.
so do we need to toss out the old one, or?
Can you just say that this one supersedes?
Yeah.
Yes, it
So-
just word your.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we approve, oh, no, we need to have a public hearing first. Oh, no, I make a motion and then you have a public hearing?
Second, and then we'll.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the estimate from Signature Blue, for geothermal repair in the amount of $11,800 to supersede the April 14th motion, subject to preparation of contract by council.
I second.
Okay, we're gonna open it up for public comment. Are there any public comments?
Can they kind of just explain a little bit what this is?
It's the geothermal for the pool. The pumps, it does the heating and the cooling of the pool.
That's all you needed to say. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out, are we on the golf course? Are we here?
And right now, the pumps, it's not sucking in all the water, so it's not working efficiently. And getting worse.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Ken,
And I'll just need to go.
thank you.
And Belinda, this is gonna have the same thing where we're gonna need the backup because it's gonna come from reserves. Okay, all right.
And we'll need a copy of that for the contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let me pass that on. Thank you for bringing that up, Jill. I forgot about that one piece. Yes. Yeah, I
Advisory,
was,
sorry, advisory committee liaison reports, are there any reports?
Yeah, I forgot. So we heard from Chef that there's a lot of work in the kitchen and a lot of things that need to be replaced. Upwards of 50 grand. So I don't know, and we just got some quickie prices just on a few things that they're looking at, ranging from a double gas convection oven, a new mixer for pizza dough, things like that. I'm not saying a braising pan. I think what I'd like to do is we need to sit with him and find out, get a priority list and go from there. And then also not knowing where we're going with an amenities company. I don't know if any of the companies that will look, if we make a change, if anybody has a purchasing program to help us get anything better price-wise, but also looking at these things too, there may also be rebates available because a lot of these will be a lot more energy efficient than the things we have. So we'd be able to get rebates back. So I just want to let you know that we're going to be looking into that because if we can't cook food or make food, that's not a good thing. So we've got that going. So we have that going on.
On that, I think you wanna, maybe we just make sure we have everything in there, things like, if we wanna get more handhelds, for dining room, et cetera. Julie and I have kind of talked about that.
Well, that's not
Yeah.
that's not facilities. So
Oh, I guess not,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
so I'm all for that, but that's
Sorry.
that's okay. So we're gonna look at that. Like I said, the pool deck is an issue, and I want to get somebody else in just to look at that because I don't think we have $200,000 in the budget to replace it anytime soon, especially with what's going on here. So let's see if we can buy some time. But as a board, what we really need to do is do a better job of maintenance and conversation between, so we have a reserve study that says, okay, theoretically, this is what's going to happen to be done. But then we don't follow the recommendations for the maintenance to get us there. Our air conditioning contract expired, maintenance contract expired in February. It's now May. We don't have one. We're going into heat season, and we don't have a maintenance contract.
what does that take though? Is it our responsibility as the board to renew the maintenance contract? Or is that something that the management
That's a
company?
different, that's a.
I mean, if it's our responsibility, then okay, then we need to get it on our agendas.
I agree with you.
But to me, that seems very operational.
Well,
We would
Yeah.
approve it because of the amount, but.
Okay,
um,
but somebody has to come to us.
Right.
Okay.
so, so I'm saying, but in facilities, because nobody else is doing it, we're trying to take the mantle of doing these things. But the question is, where does facilities and reserve start? Because we can sit and go through a theoretical or an actual plan of what really needs to get replaced here. And like we want the HVAC vendor to go in and say, okay, Because we have 3 air conditioners, just three and a half ton units coming up in like a year or so. Do all 3 have, they have an 8 to 12 year lifespan. Are all 3 getting replaced in 1 year? I doubt it, but we should at least have an understanding, not just on a piece of paper, but in reality, what the maintenance people think is the longevity of the equipment. We need to have people going out and really looking at the papers and seeing what's going on and making sure there's money in the budget to maintain it. The back fence over here is, it says in the budget for $30,000.
So you're talking about a better interchange between facilities
And reserve, for sure, and technically also even with tennis and fitness, because
Yes,
if you want work done,
Right.
yes.
and the question, and also, we're a committee of 5, and we're meeting with vendors constantly. I mean, it's a lot of work, and then we get a lot of pushback, or a lot of, we don't know what's going on, and we're trying to catch up and doing the work actually of the management company too. Just because we can.
So is there,
No, you go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, is there a better way to coordinate with reserves and facilities? I mean, it
Honestly,
seems very
I mean,
ineffective.
the reserves really, okay, so the reserves study is created to tell you where the money is. But facilities is the one that actually is spending it or recommending it or actually working with the reality of it. Facilities doesn't even get the reserve study. They have to go online to go get it because it's never been given to them.
Well, the liaison has
That's
the
not
reserve
true.
study.
Well,
That's just not true.
We
Tim-
all have
Tim-
the reserve study.
We all have,
The reserve
I
study
did,
went out to everybody.
I have.
Yes. Well, Tim didn't have it. Okay, the
And
new
the
chairs
reserve
don't have it.
study doesn't really show the money, it shows the expected life.
Right.
That's really the intent.
Right.
Well, but I'm saying, but you have to then work in, it's expected life, but then you have to look at the reality of that life, of where it goes, how it happens, so there should be a much better communication between reserve
So-
and facility.
Can you can you guys make a proposal and then, we can debate it?
We were thinking that, at least the 2 chairs should speak routinely, because we're going into budget cycle.
Right.
I don't know how much money has been put away into the budget for what items on the reserve study. Because I asked Belinda, I said, are we keeping track of what we're spending, what's going on with the reserve study? No. The reserve committee chairman told me no also. So I don't know, as a supervisor, where our money sits in terms of reserves, where it's going for, when it's planning on coming out, and how it's allocated on a yearly basis, and we'll go into budgets next week.
Well, hold on. I need to clarify that because we do track what we spend,
Yes, we do.
but what you were asking me is something different.
Okay,
So you were asking me if, for example, we didn't spend the money on, let's say, replacing the table. Where is the money?
okay,
Whether or not the schedule was redone or the life
Got it, okay,
expectancy was
okay.
done. And my explanation was typically, special purpose districts, HOAs, condos, they tend to redo their reserve study, update the study. Some do it 1-year periods, some do it 2-year periods, and some just wait a little further, depending on how they're funded. So that's different.
okay,
So we do provide, before every reserve committee meeting, Ken reaches out to Vanessa and requests like the most recent expenditures, and she sends him a schedule.
I've never seen it.
You can request it at any time.
I didn't know it existed.
Okay, yeah. It's not part of your financial statements, but it will match your reserve expenditures
Okay.
when you see an expenditure.
Right.
Perfect.
Can we get copies of that?
Sure.
Okay, because like I said, I don't know what to ask for if I don't know it exists, so that's kind
Well,
of,
I think your idea of better communication makes sense.
yeah, because like I said, because we have stuff in the reserves that may or may not, just because the theoretical life is what it says.
Right.
And then we're not following the maintenance procedures, so if you're not following the maintenance procedures, you can't expect the product to last
Right.
to what they're saying it's going to do. And then we
So
found.
this is a bigger conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it is.
No, yeah,
To
No, I was getting
Rich,
yes,
Rich, to your request, Jerry Jasper is putting together a summary of expenditures against the reserves for the last 3 years to give you an update of that. I don't know when he was gonna have it to you. I thought he would have had it by now. I've also kept track of them myself, in my own study, in my copy of my study. So the information's available. In terms of what's budgeted and what's not, what goes in the budget and what's in reserves are two very different things. And it's a longer conversation, and I can't have it now, and I don't wanna do it this way. But if you wanna talk about it at the next meeting, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, I'm fine with that, Ken. I think that's fine. I'm not, I'm not looking to do it when you're not here. I'm just saying.
A lot of, but a lot of the things you brought up, to me, are the responsibility of the management company.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing it, that's a different problem. It's not the responsibility of the advisory committees to determine if we've renewed the maintenance contract on the air conditioning or not.
Yes.
That's what Vestas should be doing. That's what they're paid to do.
Yes,
I agree.
You're right,
Yeah.
You're right, Ken.
I agree with that.
So if they're not doing it, that's another problem.
And, facilities is trying to do as much as they can because we care about the place and we see things that's just not happening.
Yeah.
Even down to like the daily, weekly, monthly schedule of maintenance. It's just, somebody's gotta do it. Somebody had to create it.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Ken.
Are there any other liaison reports?
I don't think so.
Supervisor requests for comments, are there any supervisor requests for comments?
I think I was just gonna mention to Cindy, we were talking about the geothermals and the material that backs it up because it's coming from reserves. Just so you know, I'll also be taking the package that you provided for the renovations for the aerobics room, because that has to get bundled together.
Correct.
So that there's records for ultimately that end up in Vanessa's hands. That was
Okay.
So just so
Great.
you
Thank
know,
you.
that is happening behind the scenes, but I think that was the only thing I had.
Any other supervisor requests for comments? It is 12:36 PM. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 12:36 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.